All right, can you see the presentation? Perfect. Well, hello everyone. My name is Lauren Cornell, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Novathelium. That's right here in San Antonio. And today I'm very excited to talk to you about the topic of maybe taking an alternative path with your career, or perhaps even building your own position. So if you're a scientist or an engineer or even a physician who is looking at academia and thinking, this might not be the perfect fit for me, and I'm interested in maybe starting my own business, this is the talk for you. So briefly, I'm sorry, go ahead. Briefly, I'm going to share a bit about how my business partner and I went from student to business owner, some of the resources that we use to make that happen. And I'm going to share those resources with you as well. And then some of our team are going to come on and talk about their experiences with moving from academia onto this team. So as I mentioned, I co-founded this company with my best friend, Dr. Bianca Cerchiera. We co-founded the company in 2015. And at the time, we were heavy science background. We did not have our doctorates. Bianca was actually in school, and I was working full-time at ISR. But let me share a bit background about how we got to actually forming that company. So Bianca and I actually met in the joint biomedical engineering program between the Health Science Center and UTSA. And we found ourselves having the same scientific interests. So we both joined the same laboratory. That was the laboratory of Reina Bizios, who specialized in tissue engineering. And we became quick friends for a couple reasons. One, there weren't a lot of girls in the program, so stuck together. And also, we both were very passionate and interested in tissue engineering, as well as moving beyond basic science. So we enjoyed the basic research angle, but really our goal was to make products and scientific impacts that would help a patient. And as we got to know each other a bit more, we realized that we had even more in common. We both had a family history of breast cancer in common. And because of that, we were very aware of some of the untalked about issues that happen during reconstruction and after you lose a breast and maybe a nipple from mastectomy. And so one of those problems that really stood out to us was inadequate nipple reconstruction. So many of you may not be familiar with how they reconstruct nipples today after you've lost one, but essentially they take skin on top of the breast mound and make a scar mound. And here's an example of that right here. So this is a newly reconstructed nipple made out of scar tissue on the breast. But you can see over time it loses its shape and it flattens out. And that's called losing projection. And this is really significant because research has shown that specifically nipple reconstruction aids in women's mental and emotional healing after cancer. And those benefits fade over time with this fading nipple.
Lauren,
and yes, ma'am.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. This is Brandy from LabRoots. I'm not seeing the picture that you're describing. So I don't know if you're sharing what you intend to share. I just wanted to make sure that you were sharing what you meant to share. I'm just seeing the front page of I'm seeing your PowerPoint application and the first slide of your presentation.
Can you see this?
Yes, thank you.
Let me just go one slide ahead to make sure you can still see it. Can you see a teapot now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
My apologies. So we knew there was this issue with nipple reconstruction, and it wasn't commonly talked about. And we had a background and a passion to try and solve this problem. But we didn't really have anything going for us for starting a business. So I just want to talk about where we began. We basically started with an idea. We knew there was a problem that we were familiar with out of our family and friends, but we had no laboratory, we had absolutely no money, and we had no business experience. And despite all those challenges, we knew that we wanted to move forward. But we were also aware that, just getting the data points from within our own family was probably not enough information to determine if this was going to be a viable business. And we needed to get some outside help. So one of the first things we did which I would highly recommend to anybody here who has a business idea, is we participated in a National Science Foundation I-Corps grant. And this is an amazing program. It's built for scientists, engineers, physicians. And the idea is that you go through this program and you interview people. So for each question that you have, you'll talk to 100 people and try to get more data points to see if you are on the right track. So you never talk about your product, you never talk about your idea. So for instance, we would go out, we would talk to breast cancer survivors and we would say, can you please tell me about your experience with nipple reconstruction? And you just listen. And they tell you the good things and the bad things. We talked to plastic surgeons and we said the same thing. Can you tell me about your experience with doing these reconstructions? And this way, over time, you learn what the pain points are for people and if you're actually going to be able to address them with your idea. And that helps you figure out who your customers are and do you have a product market fit. So this is a kind of small look at something called a business model canvas. So this NSF program, which you can also find on Launchpad Central, takes you through a couple really key questions when you're trying to put your business together. You know, it's what are you doing? Who are you helping? What value are you bringing with your product? And some other important questions that we as scientists don't typically tend to think about, which is who's going to buy this? Who is my end user? And then who do I need to actually make this product? So for us, we had to realize that, okay, we just can't manufacture this. We're going to have a source of the tissue. We're going to have a facility that's registered with the FDA to process this. And we're going to have a shipping and packaging facility. So there's many things that have to go into that. And then our buyer, you know, it's not going to be the patient. It's going to be the hospital or the physician who's implanting the technology. So this whole process helps you to go through and piece together these little elements that give you a quick picture of your business plan. And the idea here is that you want to do this at the early stages of your business so you can pivot if you need to. So for instance, Novothelium did a huge pivot in our first round through this NSF. So initially we wanted to take nipple tissue from the patient, process it and give it back to them. But after talking to 100 plastic surgeons, we learned that even if we could prove without a doubt there was no cancer in that nipple, they wouldn't risk their license to put it back on. And so it was actually, in fact, smarter to just get cadaver tissue from a tissue bank, new tissue, versus working with the patient's original tissue. And so that completely changed our outlook for regulatory, for who we had to work with, for cost. And that happened in the first few months of us establishing our business. So I would recommend this as an excellent place to start if you're thinking you're going to go down that path. However, something that you will need to have as you move forward with your idea is an actual true business plan. And that was really intimidating for both Bianca and I, because I think there's this culture of, as a scientist, engineer, physician, you know, business is something very foreign and separate, and it's really difficult. And how do we get into it? And that is absolutely true. I mean, there's elements that are very advanced. But I think if you look at it like a grant, where we're talking about what's the problem, what's the solution, it becomes a lot easier. So, you know, we went through this process, and then I decided it was time to go back to school and maybe learn a little bit more about the business realm. So I ended up joining a doctoral program called Translational Science, and it was the perfect fit for me, and it was incredibly helpful in my entire career. It's a program here in San Antonio, joint between UT Austin, UT Health Science Center, and UTSA. And basically the premise of this is the business of science. So it takes you through, you have a scientific product. What do I have to do to get that to the market? I have to think about patenting. I have to think about a business plan. I have to think about FDA. I have to think clinical trials, maybe applying for grants. And so there's classes that provide you all this information about how you actually move your scientific idea into the market. And so one of these classes that I got to attend in this PhD program was with Dr. Linda De La Vina. And I took it in my first semester because I was very excited to learn about this business plan. And she gave us a template. And so that really made life easier for us, looking at this business plan template and seeing how similar it was to the grant process. You know, as I said, we all identify a problem, our solution, what's already out there, how are you better than that? And then, you know, if you look at the market, many of us will write 30% of people are impacted by X disease to kind of show that there's, you know, emphasis on what we're doing. And that's the same thing that's happening here in the business plan. So I think attending a class, this is very doable. So as part of this class series, Dr. Linda De La Vina would share pitch opportunities. And so during this class, she said, hey, there is a Texas governor's women's pitch competition. Why don't you give it a try? And we'd never pitched our idea before, and we were very nervous, and we thought, what's the worst thing that could happen? Let's give it a go. We were not prepared. But anyway, we actually ended up winning that competition. We got $5,000 cash, and you can see the disbelief on our faces. We were really confused when they called our names. And this opened up a realm of funding that we were not even aware of, business plan competitions. And so here's a list of some of the ones that we've participated in. There are quite a few, both within San Antonio, the state of Texas, and even the United States. And so the ones I have here are a mix of, women-owned and student-owned, and then some that you don't have to be a student. But really, the advantage of being a student now and starting your business is that you have access to a lot of business plan competitions and funding opportunities that you don't have once you graduate. So we are very fortunate that we were in school during the time that we were starting our business. And another benefit of these competitions, besides the fact that you get cash to support your research, is that you get mentorship. So along the way, you're building people who are buying into your passions, right? They want to support you. They want to see you succeed. And because of that, they'll be on the journey with you. Also, you're getting basically a lot of advice on your business plan itself. Again, it's very similar to submitting a paper. You're submitting a paper, you have people review it and give you feedback on how you can improve your science or your overall discussion. That's the exact same thing with the business plan. So you're submitting it to these competitions. Business professionals are coming in, looking at it and pointing out, hey, did you think about this? Or, well, maybe that's not the best distribution plan. Or maybe this is your actual, market. Why don't you look into this? And slowly, as you go through each of these, you start to address these things that you couldn't see at first, and your business plan becomes more and more refined over time. And you also, at first, all the questions are new. You're like, oh, I didn't think, how am I going to answer that? But eventually you come to a point where you've heard every question possible. So you're prepared. And you're also getting finances. So I would highly recommend doing business plan competitions if you have an interest. So as I said, we did this quite a bit. And in total, we were actually able to raise $310,000 of non-dilutive funding. Now, $173,000 of that came from just business plan competitions. And we had some National Science Foundation awards. But what was interesting, what started to happen, was we started getting donations from patients. And we were not soliciting for donations. We were not advertising. It just started to happen. And that's partially because with these business plan competitions, you get a lot of free advertising. So we started being featured in documentaries about women doing business and women's health issues. We were on SciTech Now, on PBS, so you start getting written up by companies. So they're like, oh, this, passionate scientist working to change the status quo. And then people start to pay attention. And the benefit of the business plan competitions, in addition to this media, is you start to get credibility. Because when you, big fish in your hometown, you can get the help there. But as you start to go out into the world, people like to see that you've been validated by numerous institutions that this is a good idea. And so this all goes to help give you credibility as you move forward into different kinds of funding. So speaking of different kinds of funding, there's absolutely a realm outside of business plan competitions that you can go to if you would like to get funding for your business idea. Grants is probably the one we're all most familiar with. SBIRs and STTRs are fantastic funding sources for businesses. So they have phases. Phase one is typically $250,000, and then you get quite a bit more money for phase two. Phase one is $250,000, phase two is more than that. And you can get help to write these grants through the San Antonio Business Development Center here in town, which is a wonderful resource, which I'll talk more about in a bit. And these grants go to higher risk projects, but the intent is always commercialization. And there's, it's with the NSF and the NIH, there's a broad range of topics, and I would highly recommend applying to some of those as you get started. You can also do a loan. You can either do that through a traditional bank or, work with somebody like the SBA to help you find a loan. Crowdfunding, that's not something that we've done, but we've considered it. And there's many, many platforms for crowdfunding. that you can look into, and they all have different percentages they take of the income. Of course, there's your traditional investment. So there's many investors available. One local one is an angel group called Alamo Angels that you can look into. And then finally, there's donations and foundations. So as I mentioned earlier, we've gotten quite a bit of donations from patients. You can work with a foundation, or you can contact, like for us, we've contacted Susan G. Komen to see if there's any grants or funding that they can give. So you should always consider foundations and nonprofits. Another one locally is Red McCombs. And locally, to start your business, if you have questions, it's important to reach out to connect with people. But we're very fortunate that in San Antonio and in Texas, we have quite a few resources available if we're thinking about starting a company. Again, I'd like to point out the Small Business Development Center here in San Antonio. That was really valuable for us. We worked with Bijo Matthews for quite a while. And they do everything from helping you write a grant to doing conflict resolution in your company. They're really wonderful and can answer a lot of your questions in a way that you can understand. And Bijo, he himself has a scientific background and has gotten his own SBIRs and STTRs. So he can speak our language and help translate and make you successful. Of course, there's also Launch SA, which is here in San Antonio. And Lift Fund, so they provide funding. The city of San Antonio provides funding to San Antonio-based companies. And then there's many other here, Geekdom, Velocity. And one in particular that we did, which was very helpful, was Mass Challenge. And that's Mass Challenge, Texas. And they have 2 locations, one in Austin and one in Houston. And they fall under what's called an accelerator. So when you're a little further along in your business, so, you have your business plan, you have an idea of where you're going, you can choose to either do an incubator or an accelerator. So incubators are a little bit earlier stage. And the idea is that you're, for a period of time, being surrounded by people who are also working on their business. And you're just supposed to tunnel vision and get it done. And that's really helpful in the earlier stages. Accelerators are when you have your minimum viable product and you're looking to move it past just this early stage and get investment and really shoot forward. And so Mass Challenge is more of an accelerator. And we did one in Texas in 2018 and received a platinum award for them for $75,000. And in addition to that, we received funding. I mean, besides the funding, we received mentorship and opportunities to take our company on an international level. So through that program, we were recognized by the French Entrepreneur Initiative, which the country of France picks 10 US companies every year and gives them a full ride to come to France and sets up business meetings for them to talk about developing a branch of your company in Europe. So as you can see, by participating in these programs, you get access to other programs that you wouldn't necessarily on your own. And they range in time. So some of them can be 2 weeks, some of them are months. So Mass Challenge was, I think, about 3 or 4 months where you had to go to classes every 2 weeks and really, really dive in. And I have some information below on seedrankings.com if you'd like to look at the top accelerators. So just some advice. If you are planning on starting a business, don't give up. The huge part of it is just perseverance. So there's a lot of failure that goes into doing your business, but that's okay. Again, it's like an experiment, right? We do several experiments. They don't all work until you fine tune it. And I think that's the same thing with the business. And so it's okay to not have everything figured out. And really the most important thing is to just start, because progress is progress no matter how small. And starting as a student and starting early, you have access to so many opportunities that you won't have once you graduate. And the pressure is significantly less. And even if you don't decide to move forward with your business after you graduate, the experience of just learning, how do I take this and actually get onto the market? It involves so many steps. Being able to see that far forward into will this idea be successful is incredibly valuable in your career. So again, I'm Lauren Cornell. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Novathelium, and Bianca Cerchiera, PhD, is my other co-founder. And then today I'd like to introduce you to our CSO, Shata Dallo, and she's going to give you some of her insight and experiences at moving from academia to joining a startup and going on this path of, raising funds and making it work. So, Shata.
Hi, my name is Shata Dallo, and I have a PhD in immunology, And like to tell you, I spent 20 years of my life in academia between the Health Science Center and UTSA. It was a great choice for me at that time because I had family, I have 3 kids to raise, and academia really, research is, there are research, but it's really not as, on a fast pace. So there's always tomorrow. Something we don't do today, we can do it tomorrow. There is no rush. So that was the perfect thing for me. And the other thing is academia, really, you have 2 choices. Either you have an idea and you're going to write the grants and, you hope you get a faculty position somewhere in the university and you'll be on a 10-year track. But there is always that grant writing and publishing papers, mentoring kids, and teaching. It's a big responsibility. The other option is to be a research scientist. So I chose the other one. And the problem is when you are a research scientist, you're always at the low totem pole. The salary is really very low, and you don't advance and you go anywhere. You just go move from one lab to another lab who has money to fund you. Finally, I really tired of that, and I'm so happy that I met Lauren, and I joined Enophithelium. And it's a great experience for me because it is a startup company, so the pressure is not like, I love research, but the pressure is not like, now or yesterday you have to get this stuff. No, we have a product, we have to perfect the product. And I learned a lot from dealing with the product and all the way to how to package and how to market the product. And she is an awesome a teacher. I mean, she can go through all the products. She doesn't shy from telling you anything. You just, she really take you from step 1 to 2, and she teaches you that. To tell you the truth, I feel like I want to start up my own company now. So it was really a great experience. Pay is a million times better than academic, and you are respected, and it's a great experience, to be here. And the products we're working with is very close to me because I am a cancer survivor and I believe in it. And I think we're going to do great with the product.
Thank you, Shana. Very sweet. And so briefly, this is our advisory board. And Linda De La Vina, who was one of our teachers, is on our advisory board. Very impactful. Met her in the translational science program. We have several mentors and collaborators that we've met along the way through personal connections and also through the different networking events we've gone to. And that's it. So I'd be happy to take any questions or share anything if anyone is interested. Does anyone have any questions about, if you're thinking about starting a business, funding avenues, people you can talk to, legal? I'm definitely happy to help.
Adiri Matiri in the chat has posted a question. Could you talk more about taking your company to France and what happened with that? And also, I would just like to say quickly to everyone, you are able to unmute your video and your audio to ask a question if you like. So please feel free to do so. Go ahead.
Sure.
Thank you.
That was a very interesting experience. So basically, through the Mass Challenge program, we were introduced to these people and we learned about this application, which again, we would not have found on our own. And so we applied and were selected. So essentially we went over to France, and what they did was they introduced you to clinical trial experts, physicians. We spoke with regulatory departments, and their idea was, we understand the gaps that you need to address over here are different than the US. And we're going to introduce you to people and set up these connections. So whenever you're ready, you can have a branch of your company over here. And just as a sidebar, Switzerland does something similar, and they're a bit competitive, Switzerland and France. And so while we were over there, we also were invited by Switzerland to do a similar process. So we went over there and basically learned a lot of things about the culture. One thing that was interesting was we had to take a cultural class before we went and spoke to these companies and physicians to learn how to get through American barriers, essentially. And that was very effective. So after our time in France, we realized that it would be a great place to sell our product, but based on our interviews, it would be very difficult to source tissue there. So we would have to, if we'd like to, it would be the best place to do clinical trials, but we'd have to source tissue from someplace like the UK. And so that can give you some insight on when you're planning on expanding internationally, who you can work with and what's feasible. And it's not in fine detail, but it definitely gives you some insight and an outline of what that's going to look like. So like we found out, for instance, that Belgium has some of the highest rates of breast cancer in the world, and they're a destination for nipple reconstruction. And we learned that by going and talking to these people and experiencing what it would be like to have a company over in Europe. So I don't know if you have any other specific questions, but I'm definitely happy to answer them.
Larry Broom has a question in the chat, and they ask, what was the process of getting your new business building location, and when did you know it was time to set it up?
Right. So as I mentioned, we did not have a laboratory when we began. Our idea did not come from university, so we didn't have years of preliminary data to put forward. So essentially, we ended up renting laboratory space, and that's the laboratory space we're still in today. It's in the San Antonio Technology Center. So there are several companies throughout town, and even at the university, where you can rent lab space if you don't have your own. And we just had to dig through those resources to find a good fit for us. Through donations and personal circumstances, this ended up being the right place for us. But we got that laboratory probably within the first 6 months of starting our business. So we created our business, we filed a provisional patent, which gave us a little bit of protection and a year to finalize our product. And then we rented some laboratory space. And something that also was helpful was we participated in the UTSA site competition as part of that business class I attended. And we won. And part of the winnings was you get a year of free office space in SATC. And that's also where the laboratory that we are renting space from happened to be at. So it was a series of coincidences, but it all worked out quite well.
Adiri asks,
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
You just mentioned you had a provisional patent. Did you have an outcome on that application? Is it further down the road now?
Yes, it got granted a few weeks ago.
Congratulations, that's awesome news.
Thank you. Yes, so we did that all on our own. That was a bit of a painful learning process, but it's very doable. And something I am passionate about is, since we were self-taught on quite a few of these things, I don't want other people to have to go through that. It's so much easier when you have a list of even competitions or funding sources that you can access. So I'm very passionate about sharing information and inspiring people to start a business if that's something they'd like to do.
All right, one last question. Adiri posted in the chat. Could you talk about how you were able to obtain clinical collaborators with your business idea?
It was a mix of our interviews from NSF. So eventually those doctors stayed in touch and they were like, I'm really curious about what you're doing. I also care about this. And like you can see Mark Clemens from MD Anderson, he's someone we interviewed. He's on our advisory board. And then also through networking. So I would attend different business events and I'd meet somebody who knew somebody. And for instance, through that, we met a plastic surgeon at Harvard who was interested in doing a clinical trial with us. And then also we just reached out locally. So Prima Plastic Surgery, we just wrote them and said, hey, can we watch you do a reconstruction surgery? Can you tell me about this? And then just were attentive. And over time, people see your sincerity and your intention to do good for people, and they'll want to help you out.
Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for your questions. It's time for us to switch over for the next speaker.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. There will be a recording of this available, so stay tuned. And now we will be hearing from Mary Bradley. Hello, Mary. These sessions, we don't have much transition time, but Mary's going to go ahead and kick it right off. And so everyone who's here for that session, take it away, Mary.
Great. Thanks, Brandy. It is 12:30, so let me go ahead and set up sharing my screen, and then we'll let everyone kind of get settled here as well. All right. Okay. So hopefully everyone can see that. Does it look good?
That looks great, Mary.
Okay, so people can see slides.
Yes.
So, all right, just messing with some of my settings here on my end. Okay. Give people a few minutes to transition, if they're staying or coming or going. Just for those of you that are here that are planning to stay, if you want to drop in the chat if you're in a PhD program or a master's program or another program and what year you are, just to kind of get a feel for who I have here and kind of where you are in your journey of creating CVs and resumes. As Brandy said, I'm Mary Bradley. I'm the Director of Career Professional Development. I'm at UT Health San Antonio, and I'm here in the Graduate School of Biomedical Sciences. Okay. So looking at the chat, 4th year, 2nd year, 3rd year, mostly PhDs so far. Fourth year PhD here. Okay. So hopefully some of this will be a little bit familiar to some of our older students. Probably have already had to create a CV or resume at this point. So part of what we're just going to do today is kind of hit some of the highlights and then hopefully have some time at the end for questions. Okay. So I always like to start and say that CV and resume writing is an art and it's not a science. So everyone is going to have an opinion on every document that you ever produce in any fashion. So you need to kind of take everyone's input in and then make something that works for you. And you can have your own reasons. There's definitely some hard do's and don'ts, but at certain points you can have leeway to design it in the way that works for you and for the positions that you're applying for. So you kind of have to take everyone's advice with a grain of salt. So we're going to talk today a little bit about what's the difference between a CV and a resume, and the functions of the two items are two different things. So a CV is all about you. It stands for curriculum vitae, the course of life. This is basically everything that you have ever done gets put on your CV. So it's a list of everything. A resume has a very different purpose. It is all about the job. It is basically a marketing document or a marketing tool, and its goal is to get you an interview for that position that you've applied for. So therefore, it's generally much more limited in what goes on it and how you structure it, as opposed to a CV, which has a list of many things. So in general, you use a CV for academic teaching and research opportunities. It's very big in the academic world. This is what you would use to apply for a fellowship or a postdoc position, faculty positions. Once you're faculty, applying for tenure and promotion, all of these things within the academic environment are going to want a CV. And then sometimes in industry, especially if it's a research position, they may be looking for a CV as well. Academic and teaching usually go together, but again, a teaching position is usually looking for a CV as well. Generally, you're going to use a resume for almost anything else, or some kind of hybrid document. You know, you may want to use more of a resume format, but you have a little bit more research information on it. Again, it needs to be tailored to what the job is that you're applying for and whether or not they ask for a full academic CV. So this is a graphic I do often like to show how to turn your CV into a resume. As you can see there, basically you're crossing about everything out and putting your experience on one page. So a little bit jokey, but in often ways it's very true. It's much shorter and it's much condensed and specific on that. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about the sections of a CV and resume, and there's a lot of overlap. And again, you need to tailor some of these items as well. Obviously, name and contact information is very important. You must have that and have it. Sadly, I have gotten some CVs and resumes for review where people have left off their contact info. Obviously, you're applying for a position or a fellowship or something like that. So you need to make sure that you have an email and a phone number on there to contact you. Some people are leaving phones off. Some people are leaving addresses off, but at the very least, you need your name and some way to contact you, whether that's email or phone. Headers and summaries are usually only found on resumes. I bolded it and put an R after that. You usually do not have that on a CV document. Generally, education and experience are the top two sections of either your CV or your resume. Education is usually higher up on, it's usually first on CVs in general. On resumes, especially for students fresh out of a PhD program and such, usually that is at the top as well because that's your most recent. And then experience, you can have a combination or separate sections. Again, it's going to depend on you and how much experience you have. And if you want to combine everything into one general experience area, or if you want to separate it out by research experience, work experience, professional experience, teaching experience. Again, that's going to kind of depend on what you've done and how much of each item you've done. You generally don't want to have one item under an area, so you may need to combine some areas. And then after that, it kind of varies. You may or may not put publications, abstracts, and book chapters on your resume, but you may want to list at least a publication. Presentations and posters, kind of the same. Grants and fellowships that you have been awarded. Again, depending on whether it's CV or resume, you may want to put some of that under an award section rather than a separate grant section. Leadership, university service, other service is another category. Skills and techniques, whether that's scientific techniques or leadership skills, communication skills, software skills, you can have a section for that. Professional affiliations, that's usually where you list what organizations you've joined and what you're a member of. Patents, if you have it. Again, honors and awards, those can be personal, they can be professional, they can be grants, they can be travel awards, they can be fellowships. Again, some of this, you can take a lot of these categories and combine them or separate them. Again, it depends on how many of each of these that you have and how best to present yourself. So if you only have one honor or one grant and one something else, maybe you lump that all into one category and call it one thing. Activities and other interests, community involvement. A lot of times if you're in a student group or you have a leadership position or you're involved with a charity, something like that may go into one of those areas. Foreign languages, it's always nice to note if you can speak a foreign language or more than one. And then references, I also put in bold there as well. You usually only list references on a CV. You never list references on your resume. You also do not list references available upon request or anything like that. Generally, that's something that's known. If people want reference names, they will ask you for it. Or oftentimes when you're applying for a position, there's an online job application that you have to fill out as well. And so that may be a place where you would insert reference names or they will ask for them later. So those are all of the different kind of sections that you can use to create your CV or resume. And again, you kind of need to tailor it to what you're looking for. One of the biggest parts of your CV or resume is going to be that experience section. And so you need to think about how you are creating what you're saying on the document. So CVs might generally have less than a resume, but especially being a newer professional, you need to list more than that you are a graduate student in X lab at UT Health San Antonio or something like that. You need to put some statements underneath your different positions or your experience that really talk about what you did during that position. So I am a fan of using PAR statements, which stand for project, action, and result. I've also seen people use the word STAR, which is situation, task, action, and result. But the goal is to really clearly describe your experiences so that people can really have an idea of what it is that you actually did in this position and what your accomplishments are. It seems very clear to you when you're writing it and when you're thinking about it because you know what you've done, but how people read that and translate that may be very different and they may not be getting what you're trying to say to them. So using a PAR statement, you want to talk about the projects that you were involved with or the task that you were doing, and then the activity and actions that you took using verbs or your skills to highlight that. And then what was the result? What was the impact of your work? What was the usefulness of your project? Why was this important? What was the end result? And so kind of trying to piece out different things under this PAR, project, action, result, is really important to help really talk about what it is that you've done so that you can really showcase yourself in a great fashion. So I got a little creative and made up some PAR statements. So I could say that I baked cakes for charity. And I know what that means. That means I baked cakes for charity and I know what I did. But I kind of went through and created 3 different bullets based on this model that really kind of delineate what that actually means. So I baked 5 cakes in 5 different flavors for a Cystic Fibrosis Foundation bake-off charity auction, and these cakes netted over $1,000 in donation. So this showcases that I made many cakes, I can do things in different flavors, and that this brought in a lot of money for the charity, so it was important. Or I created a 3-foot tall cake shaped like Godzilla for a charity silent auction, which also raised a lot of money. So this is a different skill because this is more of a cake design and it requires different skills than just baking 5 different cakes. Or I could donate 1 homemade cake a month for a year as part of Meals on Wheels Taste Like Home volunteer program. So again, that's a completely different function of baking cakes. This is something I'm doing over time. I'm only doing once a month and the focus is more on a home meal for a senior. So I can think about baking cakes for charity in many different ways and expanding on it, quantifying it, timing it really means a lot more to someone who's reading your CV or resume about what you're doing. So something a little bit more science. When I review CVs and resumes, I see this statement a lot that I supervised undergraduate researchers. And that could mean just as many different things as baking cakes for charity. So I encourage you to really think about what that means. If you can use numbers in your CV and resume, that's always really important. So you can say you supervised 3 undergraduate research students who have now entered PhD programs. So I know how many you did, and I know what their end result is. So obviously they liked it and they did well enough and got into PhD programs on their own. You could say you supervised 3 part-time undergrad researchers for over 2 years, resulting in 1 publication. We know everybody loves publications. You can say you supervised 3 undergraduate students during a summer research program, that you trained them in lab techniques, provided feedback, and served as primary contact in the lab. That one doesn't have quite as much of an end result, but it still shows what you did and how you were involved. So I'm hoping that makes sense. I'm kind of eyeing the chat. I don't see anything in there yet, but if you guys feel free to throw things in the chat or jump in. But it's just really important to really think about what you do and then parse it out as much as possible, because you don't know who's reading your CV or resume and how they're going to actually translate or view how you're writing. Numbers, quantity, time are always really important. A couple other phrases I see a lot are managed a budget, or wrote a grant, or got a fellowship, or got an award. Again, what award was it? How much was it for? How much time did it cover? Did you write an R01 grant, or did you apply for a T32? There's a lot of different ways to look at it. So the more information that you can give anyone looking at your CV or resume, the better. Okay. I want to jump a little bit and talk about formatting. So for a CV, I recommend first that you start with your field or your department. Different areas may have standards in certain ways that they like to use it. Some universities are very specific that they want all CVs formatted in a certain way. So I would start with there. Again, the CV is your course of life, so there is no page limit. If you find a senior faculty member, they can have a 30-page CV with everything they've ever done under the sun. So generally for a young professional, 2 to 4 pages is about right. And you can utilize a lot of those different sections that we talked about in the beginning. 4 to 7 once you have more experience. And then, as I said, a long-term faculty could have a super long CV. Generally, you use your university contact information on your CV, especially if you're applying for a fellowship or a grant or doing something internal. Once you start getting to the end of your graduate school years or your postdoc years, I would really think about that. Some people can keep their academic email addresses, some can't. But if you're out job searching and you know that you're going to be leaving this position in a few months or something like that, then I would really look at using a permanent email address, because you don't want someone to try and contact you for a position and not be able to get a hold of you because your email doesn't work anymore. So really think about what you're applying for, what you're using it for, to know which email address to use. Okay. So material presented early in your CV makes a stronger impression. Name on your top of every document for everything. Education is usually at the top as well. Research, teaching, and possibly work. Usually on a CV, you don't always have work experience unless perhaps you did a stint in industry that may not fit under research experience. If you're applying for a teaching position, I would put teaching experience first. If you're applying for a research position, I would put the research experience first. But generally, those 4 things there on the top are the top items on your CV. And then after that, you can put the rest of the categories as you wish. If you're applying for a research experience, I would probably put publications pretty high as well. And don't forget to bold your name or otherwise signify, where your name is in the order so people know. You can list works in progress, submitted articles, things like that, if you have things that are on the way to being published. So that's something else that you can list there as well. For resumes specifically, I would stick to a 2-page limit, especially for someone coming out of school. I would not go over 2 pages. I would also really make sure that the most important things are on the top third of your first page. The top first third to 2/3 of that first page is where reviewers are going to look first. So you need to watch your margins. You need to really format super well the first page and the top of your resume, because people will pick it up, people will start skimming. Sometimes they don't always finish the page. So you need to make sure that you get your most important items that fit for that job on that first page. In resumes especially, as we said at the beginning, these are marketing documents. Its goal is to get you an interview for that job. So try and mirror the words from the job description as much as possible. Use industry keywords. If they really want somebody who can do X, make sure that you have X somewhere in your resume. And then some general formatting for both CVs and resumes. Make sure everything is in reverse chronological order. So your education, your experience, your publications, anything that you should put on there should be most current first and oldest last, so that they can see what you've done most recently. Also, make sure that you put your name on every page, starting with page 2. Obviously, the first page should have your name and contact info at the top. For any page after that, make sure you have your last name or something like that, page 2 of 4, just in case somebody prints it and the pages get separated. They need to know. You should be using past tense. You can possibly use present tense on your most current job if you're still there and doing things, but otherwise past tense. I am a big fan of bullet points. I think it's easier to read. You can list your specific items. Some people prefer to use more of a paragraph blurb under each position or area. That is another option. If it's too long, people get overwhelmed and they won't keep reading. So sometimes bullets are a lot easier to go through. And then using strong action words, using your PAR statements and really showing what, why, and how about what you've done. I do encourage everyone to create a master resume, and to some degree, you can even create a master CV that may not be necessarily what you would send out. And this is basically a list. It doesn't have to be pretty. It can be kind of separated by section of everything that you've done, and you keep adding to it over time as you do things so that you have things to go back to and things that you can put into a resume and use it to build different documents for specific positions. But this way you almost have a tracking history of all your accomplishments and things that you've done, because as time goes on, you start to forget about all the things that you've been involved in and the projects you've worked on, people you've worked with, results, and things like that. So keeping some kind of master list is really great, especially over time as you grow through positions, because you're not going to remember what you did, you know, sometimes last year or 2 years ago or 5 years ago. And so this makes it really helpful. Additionally, just to talk about margins, I would say 1 inch to a 1/2 inch margin. Don't go any smaller than that. Using a serif font is preferred. It's usually easier to read. Font size, 10 to 12 points. I would really not go below 10 points on a font. You don't want to make it too hard for someone to read your CV or resume. If the font is really small and there's lots of applications for positions, people won't take the time to read. Also use consistent formatting. Watch your bolding and underlining. You need just enough to highlight what information that you want people to find, and using consistent formatting with your headings and things like that really helps structure your document. And then be aware of too much or too little text. As I said, if you only have one award, you don't want to have one whole section for that. So you need to combine it so that you have blurbs and groupings across your document. So you have to watch that. And then proofread, proofread, proofread. Typos are awful. And I've seen some documents in the past, but typos and incorrect grammar and things like that will get you kicked out of the search. And it wasn't even anything to do with your science or your abilities. You need to be careful with jargon and acronyms. So they may be very specific to your field, or one acronym may mean one thing in one field and something different in another field. So be careful how you use those and make sure they're presented correctly. Make sure you name your resume or CV with your name, first name, last name, something like that. You know, it's just easier for people to find it, especially when they're downloading them and things like that. That file comes ready-made with your name on it. I encourage you to print it and just eyeball it. Check out your layout, check out your formatting. Are all your headings the same? How does your white space look? Is there too much bold going on? Is there too much underline? Where does your eye go when you print that CV or resume? Again, the goal is to make it as easy as possible for reviewers to get the information, to learn about you, to want to read your document. So making it as easy as possible for them gets you a better read and hopefully an interview. So those were my quick tips for today. I've got 12:53 on the clock, so we have some time before 1 to answer questions or go back and talk about anything further. What would you all like to talk about?
I have one question.
Yes.
It's regarding the references. Previously, I have used references upon request. If someone's really interested, they can contact me about the references because, like if I was applying for a lot of schools or whatnot, it all already be included anyways. But for specific jobs, I guess it wouldn't be there to begin with. So is it okay to just leave it as upon request, or should I just go ahead and include it?
I don't think you need it. I would think if someone wants a reference, they would ask for them. I think anyone who's applying for a position knows that references may be requested and should have references lined up. Is your thought that they wouldn't ask for them if you didn't have that?
No, I was just, it kind of sounded like your presentation that you should go ahead and have the references on the CV anyways. But what I was trying to say is that normally I just have it upon request.
On your CV?
On my CV, yes.
Yeah, that's true. I think you could do that either way on the CV. For a resume, I would definitely not put it. For this, and honestly, for me personally, I think you could just probably do references upon request. Or if you, I'm pondering, I guess I'm thinking like maybe if you worked for super well-known scientific researcher X, maybe, and they've offered to give you a reference, maybe you would want to list them because they would see that name and know who it is. And maybe that's part of the reason for putting some of them on there, especially if you're going for a science job or a faculty job or a postdoc. They may see somebody they know. But I think generally everyone's going to check references for any position you would apply for, so they would request them. So I think you could just do references upon request.
Okay, thank you.
And, and some people may or may not update their CVs very frequently. So if you're going to leave a person X on your CV or resume as a reference for years and years and years, it gets a little bit difficult as too. Because you should always alert your references that you'll be applying for positions so that they know that you are applying, so that when they get called, they know what job you've applied for and they have a current copy of your resume or CV so that they can best promote you as well. So just leaving people's names hanging out on your CV for years is probably not a good idea either. I hope that makes sense. Other questions or things that you want to talk about? We have a couple minutes before the next speaker.
Can I add a quick comment?
Sure.
So when I was looking for jobs, when I was getting out of my PhD, I had maintained 3 different CVs, one for industry, one for clinical, and one for academic, so that if I was at a conference and someone said, can you send me your CV tonight and we can see about an interview tomorrow, I'd at least have something in the neighborhood. The other thing I would point out is never send your CV to somebody in a Word document format. You never know how it's going to be interpreted by their computer, so always transfer your CV to a PDF before sending it to anybody.
Yes, thanks, Dr. New. I agree with both of those. And having a master CV or resume document helps you if you are on the active job search and if you are going to conferences. I love it. You are so prepared. That's perfect. Have versions so that you have something to give somebody. And yes, I am a huge fan of the PDF as well, because I've gotten some really crazy looking documents sometimes between Mac and PC and Word. And if you use I'm also not a big fan of templates for resumes and CVs, because that's another thing that gets really squirrely, especially if you haven't PDF'd it. Adiri's asking about the cover letter. So my short answer here in the minute or so we have left is your cover letter should emphasize specific parts of your resume or CV. So it should talk about why you're interested in the position. And then it should tell a little bit, like maybe a story or an anecdote about something that directly relates to something that's requested or related to what the job description is. And it also gives you the chance to put something in your cover letter that doesn't fit well into a bullet or a bulleted format on your resume or CV. So it's something that you can expand on and highlight. If you managed a budget of $8 million, then maybe you could tell a story about how well you managed it or something specific related to that. So it gives you a chance to kind of highlight a skill or accomplishment and tell them a little bit more about it. But yes, you should definitely not reiterate bullet points from your CV or resume into your cover letter, but maybe pick one or two things to really expand on and highlight and tell a story about how you were so awesome at it. And then you kind of wrap up with, how excited you are to interview for this position and talk about it. Cover letters also give you a chance to explain any gaps or strange things in your resume or CV that you want to explain in any fashion. That's another great use for cover letters. Okay, it's 1 o'clock, so feel free to email me if you have other questions. Happy to address that later.
Thank you, Mary. And we'll be transitioning now to Emily Reiser, who's our next speaker. So Emily, as soon as you're ready, you're welcome to start your presentation, share your screen, or just turn on your video and start off with what you have to talk about today.
Thank you, Brandy. Hi, everyone. Hope that you're all doing well today. Thank you for being a part of this session. I don't have any slides today, so I'm here just to talk about my journey and what I do now. And please, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them over into the chat at any time. So for those of you who don't know anything about the Texas Medical Center, that's where I sit. It is in Houston, Texas, and we are a community that supports the healthcare systems that sit on a 2.5 square mile radius over there in Houston. There's a UT system over there as well, of course, UT Health and MD Anderson, and lots of other great institutions, Houston Methodist, Baylor College of Medicine, Rice, U of H, and many more. And so my role is to support innovation that happens with each of those member institutions, whether that means an investigator who's developing something and trying to bring it out of the lab, or an innovator coming from around the world that wants to implement something with a research or clinical partner at the medical center. So I have an incredible opportunity to work alongside amazing clinicians, researchers, entrepreneurs, investors, key advisors, corporate partners, and my role is to manage all of those relationships. So where I came from was probably similar to many of you. I did research at Rice in cancer immunotherapy and was looking to figure out how to go from there into something that was a little bit closer to the patient bedside, and was exploring how to get a better understanding of the whole process of drug development. Through that, I decided I was going to get some business experience. So I tried to go take some classes in the business school, which I was promptly told no, that I wasn't able to do that. So I found another way, which was through a group called Adventure, which does have a chapter site here in San Antonio, if you'd like to learn more about that group. Adventure is basically a group that helps anyone looking to get transition from a life science career into more of an innovation career. So PhD students, postdocs, undergrads, residents, law students, MBA students, and young professionals in the space have the ability to come together to learn, to develop, to experiment with their careers, to build their networks, and to be part of something. So that's all volunteer. So it was a great opportunity to be around other people who were as interested and excited about that phase of moving into that career as well. So the next thing for me was to try and do both, learn how to start my own company and also finish my PhD. Along the way, I gained a tremendous amount of network access in Houston. Texas has small but growing innovation communities. And so you can go from feeling like you don't know anyone and it being super scary to enter a networking engagement, all the way to being an integral part of the community in only, a couple of years. So that was what happened for me. I continued to look to build trust with new groups of people, and it also provided a great way to have access to a different network during grad school, which I think was great for my mental well-being. I know sometimes people talk about, not having the ability to do other things outside of grad school, but my access to a project that I could get quick wins on, bringing people together, and access to other folks in the network that could understand what I was going through was really helpful for me. So I found a great community there through that process. Thank you, Mary, for sharing those links. Over time, I did finish my PhD. I was working with a clinician, helping her to figure out how to get her startup off the ground, and I'm still very excited about what she's building. But kind of came to a fork in my career journey where I was unsure what to do next. So I thought I might still go into pharma manufacturing or into clinical research management, but ended up having the opportunity to work for the Texas Medical Center. So started out by running our Team CX Accelerator, which is that outside in innovation. That's where we're recruiting companies from around the world to come to Houston, partner with our institutions, and hopefully have a clinical study or some kind of other relationship that we help them to develop over that time. When I came in, the program was very curriculum driven. We had like classroom time for the companies, and we actually substantially changed the model, which was something that was super fun to be a part of. I guess I'm probably one of only 50 people in the world that has ever designed a healthcare accelerator from scratch, because we basically used the fundamentals of what we'd learned over the last 5 years to completely redesign the program. I actually just got off the phone with the chief innovation officer of one of our systems and their team, and really just was so interested to hear how they're thinking about innovation in a new way since a year ago, and how we can build new relationships to help partner with them. So I guess November of last year, I switched gears into managing our network, which seems to be a very odd role for somebody who was such an introvert always and still is. And it's a very abstract thing to talk about. So the way that I talk about it that might be helpful is anyone who needs something in the healthcare innovation space, I know who to get it and how to get there. So just spending a lot of time with all of our different partners, figuring out what people need, figuring out, what they care about, and how to get something valuable to them is ultimately what I do. So it's just a lot of listening and a lot of talking with people. So that has certainly been interesting in COVID. My whole job is to create community, which a lot of that involves a physical space in normal times. So it's definitely been interesting for all of us to really figure out what community means and what relationship development means in the healthcare setting. But at the same time, we also had the opportunity to support all of our healthcare systems, navigating COVID with different data projects, COVID data, and all this other things behind the scenes that have really only strengthened to build the relationships that we're looking to support. So I've talked about a lot of things in a pretty abstract way, but that's kind of who I am and how I got here. I think that some of the most exciting things about careers in innovation is that it's actually for everyone. And that's something that I care about a lot, and is why I'm going to be starting this initiative called Invitation to Innovation. So over the last 5 years, in conversations with people that are looking to change their careers, either through Inventure or through other roles that I've held, I've noticed that a lot of people think that it's not for them to be part of something in innovation. If it's a technical inventor, a PhD type person, I need a business person in order to get this off the ground. Or I then talk to the MBA candidates and they say, well, I need a technical person to start something. I don't know what to do yet. And so on and so forth. But innovation is really a space for anyone who's passionate and dedicated and invested in solving a big problem in healthcare. We have lots of people who are technical, who are project managers, who are relationship managers. Sorry about my dog, everybody. Who are designers, who are communicators, who are in marketing and sales and all this other kind of stuff. And so really it's not about what kind of background people come in with. It's more about the vision that we all try and create together, and the boxes that we try and break down or not even see in the first place. So I am here to tell all of you that there is a place for you in innovation if you so choose. And it doesn't have to just be an entrepreneurial journey. There's so many other ways to come and be a part of it. So I'd like to encourage all of you to do so. I see some Adventure San Antonio members here, including Justin and Mary. So please definitely reach out to them if you have any further questions, if you're in the San Antonio area. So I guess I can talk a little bit more about the process of innovation in healthcare and lessons that I've learned. But again, I do feel like I'm rambling, so I would love to hear any thoughts from you all as you have them. Oh, there's Justin. Hi. Would you like to say anything, Justin? I'll put you on the spot.
I've been here. No, I mean, thanks for the plug. Good to see you. I had a quick question, kind of like about how you help individuals who, especially like who are really coming from that heavy science background, have very little business knowledge, and are kind of looking to take that next step into innovation outside of adventure and things. How do you help them develop those skills? Say it's like an academic PI. How do you help them develop those skills so that they can translate, their baby, their research that they've been working on for forever? How do you kind of help transition them to thinking about it in a commercial sense?
Yeah, great question. I think that most of the time, individuals who are on an academic pathway already have a lot of the tool sets that they need, and it's a matter of reframing and recommunicating about those tool sets, whether that be talking about yourself as an individual that wants to go into innovation, or whether you're talking about a product that you've developed in academia that you're looking to bring out. So I'll talk about it from both of those lenses. So to be a great entrepreneur or business leader, you have to have great time management, budget management, teamwork and collaborativeness, and ability to present complex things quickly and efficiently. You have to be able to manage your own time, manage other people. So a lot of the things that we're used to thinking about in an academic setting are extremely relevant when running any kind of team. And a lot of those concepts are universal. I think another key particular advantage that folks from academia have coming into an innovation business lens is that there are not enough people that push boundaries and think outside the box and are willing to kind of question everything. So when we work with a lot of corporate folks that are all about the corporate structure and ladder and infrastructure and things like that, they think about, how do I meet my goals to get my bonus, and which can be helpful in some cases, but really like the advantage to coming from an academic world is that it's not about the box that's already created. It's why is that box there, and how do we really do this the right way, and bringing that element from an academic critical thinking framework into whatever other area that you're all considering is a particular advantage of the training. When we think about a project or technology, the hardest thing to get past from that transition point is what is valuable outside of the academic setting. So in the academic setting, it's publish and something new and different and follow the shiny object and see where it goes, and everyone is supported to do that. In the business world, that's no longer the case, which some people are extremely discouraged by, and I understand. And in that case, academia might really be for you. But it's not a bad thing. It's just about reframing where the value is coming in, right? So academia value is something new that's never been done before. Get it out and kind of build sort of on it. in the industry world, it has to be repeatable. It has to be something that other people can do. It has to be something that meets other people's needs or interests, that isn't just, oh, this is cool and new. And so it's not about like, cancer is bad, let's develop something new that kind of fixes it in mice, which I did that, and there's a lot of great value. I don't mean to say that that's not worthwhile doing. It absolutely is. But outside of academia, it's for who, and like who really is going to buy this in the end, who will use it, how does it get from point A to point G, and the people who care from A to B also have to have the same alignment as like from F to G. And so it ends up kind of creating this environment where the same thing that you're building has to make sense to a clinician who might deliver that therapy, makes sense to the market. There has to not be any other therapies that can do exactly that thing. But again, if it's the first one, then the FDA won't really know how to handle it, and it'll be a lot harder to get through that process. And then if the FDA doesn't know how to handle it, investors are going to be scared to get it far enough along to see if it'll even make it through. And so as soon as all of those questions come in about like what is the actual endpoint and who has to care all the way along the way, you end up bringing all these people that have different goals and different priorities and different types of experience and things that they care about. And to find the one technology and the one person who can shepherd it all the way through all of those things is so rare. And that's not a bad thing. So as a technical innovator, you can get it to point C and find a partner that can help, all the way through the rest of the steps, so that you, as the technical person that loves coming up with new things, can go back and do it again. And that's where the fun is. So I guess I kind of talked through a lot of things, but ultimately your questions were, what do technical, people and projects bring into the business world? And fundamentally it's the critical thinking and the new way of thinking that set people with this type of training apart. As long as you can take that and partially be open to the fact that other people that come into it are going to bring process and framework around it, and knowing that that is what is necessary to take it to the next step and beyond, and being open to hearing what their level of experience is bringing to that conversation, is something that we navigate with all the time, supporting technical founders to progress to a stage where they can really, deliver on the impact that they've been promising throughout the whole process.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like accelerating it beyond the point of just academic research, and getting involved with that teamwork aspect of, okay, there's people out there that have more skills than me, bringing those on board and getting it beyond your own capabilities past point C to point G. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we're definitely going through this a lot right now. So I'm pulling out a few stories as we're talking through it, because especially the academic researchers, the professors, the grad students that come into starting a company and having great success so far, the point where they're really trying to figure out how to get to the next step is around focus. And so we have this amazing company that has a platform technology, right, which is great, can do anything that they want it to do. It can enter $1 trillion market, like he's sort of checking all of these boxes for getting a lot of interest and excitement and enthusiasm around what they're doing. But because it's so big, they can do so many things with it, and they're having trouble sharing the story about what they're looking at, as well as like what they're doing now and how it gets all the way to that point. Because right now they're really running 3 different businesses at the same time today. And our team is here to try and help them. Okay, that's too many things. You aren't going to make it to this goal by doing all of those 3 things for the next 10 years. So how can we help you figure out what business that you're really trying to build, how to get to the milestones that you want to achieve as leading this business, and what outcomes that you're trying to see. So that means like, what corporate partnerships are you building? How are you funding the research and development? How are you prioritizing the operational running the business versus the strategic thinking about the future? And who is providing those insights? Are they people that you feel like you can trust and that have the right experience to get you where you need to go? So that's where someone like me would come in, is to say, hey, look, I think this person who's giving you advice doesn't actually know everything about this area. And so you should consider bringing in this person. Just have a conversation with them, see how it goes, see if they're bringing something new to the discussion. And sort of course, over time, hopefully that person will realize who's really in their corner and who's really there to help them. It's a little bit abstract because I'm not the one doing the business, right? So at the end of the day, like, it's up to the entrepreneur, to the technical founder, to the whole team in order to decide what business they're going to run. And they can always ignore all of my advice, our team's advice, all the time, because we're not running the business, and we get to just sit back and say, like, you need to consider something different, or you need to do it this way. I know a lot of people get frustrated by that, and I get it, because they're not in the weeds. They're not, like, we're not the ones feeling like, you know, we're not going to be able to make payroll if this doesn't work, you know, and this is what we need to do in order to get, you know, all of our people paid and stuff like that. So there's a lot of other factors to that, but I guess that's one thing I'll touch on too. I think another misconception in the startup world is that you're always like very close to not getting a paycheck, which at the very earliest stage startups can be true, of course. But for the most part, the companies that I work with, they already have sufficient funding for at least 18 months. And so when you think about like working for a startup that's already been funded, you know, by a venture capitalist, at least one round, that company has a combination of grant funding and VC funding that's going to last them for a couple of years. And so I do recommend that most people who are PhD students, postdocs, go to a corporate job if they want to, or if they're not sure what they want to do, because it does provide a lot of that framework about how to get things done faster, get it done 80% instead of 100%, how to communicate, you know, in the value chains that corporate companies care about. And you can bring that into any kind of innovation career as well. But, you know, if you join a startup, there's certainly not a high likelihood that you're not going to get paid the next month just because they're a startup. There's lots of well-funded startups that continue growing and that get continued investment. So it's not like it's a risk for sure, but it's not like the riskiest career choice either.
So I wanted to, I guess, follow up a little bit, because you talked about some of the complications that go along with, you know, like some of the early stage ventures. What would you say, you know, the most common, like across the board risks are, and how do you deal with those risks? Like, can you just solve it with venture money? Or is it something that you solve with, you know, bringing on the right staff or outsourcing? Like, what are the biggest risks that you kind of see across the board, and how do you tackle them?
Yeah, great question. The biggest risk overall is people not knowing what they don't know, which is a very commonly used phrase that sort of doesn't mean anything until you dig into it a little bit more. So I'll break it down with a few examples. So the most alarming thing that we see are first-time entrepreneurs who don't think that they have anything to learn, or don't think that they're, you know, because it is like, it's your thing that you've developed and you know it better than everyone else. And that's always how it's been. And so to all of a sudden, like, be immersed into a world where, you know, other people are telling you that there's things that you don't know about your own business that you're trying to run, can be really startling at first, and can be really hard to get through that next step. So, you know, when we see people that are not even open to a conversation about, you know, what's possible, and that they're not even going to entertain an expert telling them that that they need to consider a different perspective, that's when we were the most alarmed. And so Joanna, who's the founder of Venture, actually recently did a talk about the balance between resiliency and coachability. And so, yes, you're the one doing it. You're the one in the mix of it, in the trenches, figuring out how to get it done. And you have to stay resilient and firm with what you believe. And then you also have to be open to hearing new ideas and seeing how they might fit in with the model that you're creating, and open to change that model if you need to. So it's the ones that have, it also happens with people who've done it before too. So we also get serial entrepreneurs who come in and say, I've done this before in a different field and I don't need any help and I know exactly what I'm doing. And I'm like, okay, great. Like, good luck. There's nothing I can do then to help you because you're already good to go. So it's not only about the first time entrepreneur. So yeah, I think it's a tough job to be an entrepreneur, to always have different feedback, and it's literally your job to just figure out which feedback is right. And in order to do that, you just have to get more and more and figure out who to trust and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think I answered your question at the end, but
you're doing good. You're doing good. I like it. And that's like another thing, like, right, you get a lot of feedback from a lot of people, and even if you want to be a sponge, it's kind of hard to even filter through all of that information. So it's a tricky kind of field to navigate through, for sure.
It's nearly impossible to filter through it all, which is, for us, the purpose of what we're doing and part of what you asked before. So no, it's not about the money. Like, the money is we have a venture fund, which is a piece of leverage to say, we will not invest in your company, or we will not invest in your company again until you can properly explain the clinical evidence that you're going to gather in the next 6 months to prove out this risk that everybody can see in your business. Or we're not going to invest in this right now because you need to add this layer of your team, and you don't need to hire that person before we invest, but you need to identify them. You need to start bringing them into the conversation. We need to get to know them. Like, it's so it is just a strong piece of leverage that we can use in order to do that. But at Teams Innovation, we do a lot before we even talk about investment. So we do a lot of work to drive a relationship between a startup and a healthcare system. And there are certainly companies who are prepared, who know what they're asking for, who, share exactly the content of the email that they want us to write, which sounds crazy, right? But like, they're removing friction from our job, and who say, I need to talk to this person, and this is what I want. This is why I think they would be interested in my company, and, and then all that kind of stuff. And so the people that don't know what they're looking for, or who don't help me help them, are the ones that I have to take more time to make that happen for them. And so in the end of the day, the ones that have done more of the work for me already get more out of it, right? We get out what you put in. So all that to say is, there's so many things that happen before an investment even comes into the picture that anyone can do to start to build trust and relationships with people. Just follow up and follow through. It's that simple, and it's so hard to do. If I can't trust Justin to follow through with something, then I can't give him any responsibilities or things like that. Of course I can, because he's proven over and over again that he does that. Then that's a great opportunity for me to provide more opportunities back to him to say, because you've already done this in this setting, then I can do that again. And so that's why I care so much about the developing talent piece of it, because I did this with one of the clinicians that we work with. She was looking for someone to work in her lab, and I was like, you need to talk to Giselle. So now Giselle works in the lab, and I've now helped Giselle to find a pathway out of academia that she didn't want to be in. And I've also helped this clinician to get a super strong, reliable, dedicated person to work with. So now both of them trust me to help them with whatever they need next. I see, Brandy, you're back to
Back.
to
We
yeah.
have one more minute. Thank you for your presentation. It's been very interesting to hear about your pathway and finding what works for you. So thank you so much for sharing. Our next speaker is Manpreet Simwal. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. And she is queuing up. We have very little transition time here, but thank you so much, Emily, for sharing, and Justin for being on camera as well to share about getting into business. So Manpreet, we will just let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Brandy. I'll go ahead and share my screen and then I'll talk about my presentation. So I hope everybody can see my presentation, and
we can see your, yes, there you are.
Okay. All right. So hello, everyone. Thank you, first of all, for being here. As Brandy said, my name is Manpreet, and I am a sixth-year PhD student at UT Health Science Center. And today I'll be giving a small talk on how to overcome graduate school challenges during COVID-19. So as a grad student myself, and as all of you know, that grad school comes with lots of challenges on its own. But during the COVID-19 time, especially during the pandemic, these challenges has been escalated. So what I'll be talking today about is my own personal experiences and thoughts and some of the strategies that I used to kind of cope up with some of these challenges. And again, this is again from my own personal experience, but please feel free to jump in to ask questions and share about your experiences and your thoughts. So before we start the presentation or before my talk, I just want everybody to take like few seconds, and you don't have to say it out or like say it in the chat, but let's take a few seconds here to think about the challenges that you have been facing as a grad student, either currently or in the past few months. So we're going to start with our 10 seconds here. So as I said, again, you don't have to say it loud, but if you thought about your challenges and they fit any of these categories, like you're going through isolation, there has been a lot of stress, which is not uncommon in grad school. The conflict with your supervisor, there has been funding issues. You have been thinking about getting your publications out, but it's not happening anytime soon because there is delays in journal accepting the papers and revisions. There has been problem. You've been having time management problems. You're worried about work-life balance. There has been graduation delays, lack of personal support, or even like stress, like finding a new job because of freeze hiring and so many things. Then I want to let you know that you are not alone in this. So I think at every point, a grad student goes through one or many of these challenges. And for me, especially when the COVID-19 hit, I was like impacted by two main things. One was the graduation delay. And the second thing, as being an international student, finding a job is challenging enough. But because of freeze hiring and other immigration problems, finding a job was really stressful. So what's just the first step when you do that you're having these challenges? The most important and crucial step is realizing and accepting the situation that you're having these challenges. So for a long time, what I did was, especially during the pandemic, when I had in my mind, I was constant, like this cannot be happening. I was in constant denial and it did not help. So once I started accepting the fact that I was facing these challenges and there are challenges I'll have to come up and face, it was actually, I started understanding what are these problems that I'm going to have. And that actually sometimes is helpful because sometimes it's not as bad as we think. So once I wrote down, okay, these are the problems that I'm going to be facing, but at least now I know what are the problems I have. So now I can go ahead and start working towards it. And I realized that during this time I was not okay. And I realized that's fine too. And I really like this quote which says, it's okay to not to be okay. You don't have to always be brave face and say, okay, like it is what it is. And sometimes you're not feeling okay about it, and that's totally fine. So once I had all this like challenges listed down, then I started thinking, I have these negative remarks right now, but is there anything that I'm grateful for? Can I channel some of this, my negative energy, to have any positivity in my life? And then I started making of the things that I was grateful for. So I realized that although I was having all these challenges, I still had the constant support of my loved ones, my family, my friends. My loved ones were safe, and we still hear like really bad news all over the world with so many people dying, losing their loved ones. I was really grateful that my loved ones were safe. I was thankful to have a job. We also have seen a lot of people have lost their jobs and are having problems economic wise, but at least I thought I was happy enough, or I was grateful enough to wake up every day and look forward to going for a job that I really love. And then I started focusing my negative thoughts into more like, thinking what I was grateful for. And it is nice to have that kind of positive energy around you. So once I realized that I have these problems, the next step was, can I do anything to work around it? Sometimes it's hard to directly face or conquer the challenges, but you have to work around it. And I started making new plans. And the way I started doing was by communication. So for my professional challenges, I talked to my PI. So I knew there was going to be graduation delays. There are going to be delays and everything in paper publication. So I talked to my PI, and then we started coming up with a different plan or a different timeline. And that was really helpful. For my job related problems, I started seeking out career advice from Mary or other people like at the school or even outside the school to tell them about, this is my plan. How do you have any suggestions to go about? Then I also talked to a counselor and as well as like talking to the colleagues, friends who were in the similar situation was really helpful. So if I was having a personal challenge, then I went ahead and talked to my family, my friends, and again, counselor, seeking them like, how they are doing and, seeking out a support system to make sure that I can work around this. And this is another quote that I really like that says, we don't have to do it all alone. We were never meant to. And it is true because as a humans, we exist as a society. And that the reason for that is like we are counting on each other. So I realized I can be the support system for others, and I can seek out the support from others as well. So it's kind of like living in a community and doing it all together. So once I knew what were my challenges are and how I was going to actually face them or kind of work around them, then the next step was to make some realistic goals. And the reason I say realistic goals is for a reason. And the reason for this is once I said, okay, I'm going to be working from home, mostly because of the lockdown when we were having that, I started making some really big plans, and I realized they're not going to work. So that's why I said realistic goals. You can make a long-term goal that is like 6 months from now or 8 months from now, I want to do this. And in order to get there, these are my short-term goals. But one thing it's really important to keep in mind while doing this is you make a flexible to-do list. As I said, initially I was making this big plans and so many goals and kind of stressing myself. So I realized that that's not going to happen. So I came up across this really good graph, which says coming up with the SMART goals. So SMART goals, basically it means is your goals should be specific, it should be measurable, most importantly, achievable and realistic. So I'm going to read 10 papers in 2 days. That's not going to happen. I'm going to write my dissertation in 1 week. Again, that's a goal, but is it a realistic and achievable goal? No. So I realized that just making goals is not enough. They have to be achievable, realistic, and timely. And while making these goals happen, do not neglect the most important thing. And that most important thing is you. So I realized that if I had to take care, like this new role, like, working from home and everything, and being a good grad student and good mother, what was really important is taking care of myself. And I really like this quote which says, you cannot pour from an empty cup. You must fill your cup first. So basically, if I want to be productive in the lab and get the most out of it, at the same time taking care of my family, I need to take care of myself first. So one thing I wish I had done this sooner, but then I started picking more into it and started thinking of something to do in 10 or 15 minutes. And I realized that how much important the self-care is. Like taking out time for yourself. It doesn't have to be an elaborate, extensive hobby, but something that can be done in 10 minutes or even 15 minutes. So I started thinking of what can I do every day for 10 to 15 minutes for myself. And then there are a lot of things that you can do. And the reason you want to take care of yourself is, so once I was attending a seminar and this really wise person said, if you ever think, do you know how much investment goes into making a PhD? And the answer to that is $1 million. So think of it this way. What do you do with $1 million? You take care of it. Similarly, you are a PhD student. You're going to be a PhD once you get out of the grad school, and your worth is about $1 million. So it's really important that, and this is not the only reason, it's just one example I'm explaining, that you need to start taking care of yourself. And every time I think I might not be doing enough, or am I worthy, I always remind myself that I'm a walking asset of $1 million. So I have to take care of myself. So how can you do or take care of yourself in 10 to 15 minutes? There are a lot of different ways to do it. And I came up with some, but not limited to hobbies such as reading, like reading a chapter. I love reading fiction. So like reading a small chapter, like for 10 minutes, a short story was very fulfilling. You can go out for a jog, a walk, meditate. Just have to be 10 or 15 minutes. Something not fancy baking, but something you like cooking or baking, like 10, 15 minutes, like you can come up with new recipes or, try something else. And one thing that I really find fulfilling is coloring. So I am not an artist, but coloring, I think, is a great way that helped me to practice mindfulness and also to concentrate my thoughts. And for a person like me who doesn't have, who cannot draw, it doesn't require any artistic skills, but it is a great way to take care of oneself. So remember, next time you think of, okay, am I worth it? Think about the fact that you are, because you're walking asset of $1 million. Never forget that. And this is a really quote I really like, is that self-care is giving the world the best of you instead of what's left of you. So if you want to be productive, you want to be a good grad student, you want to be there for others, you have to first be there for yourself. And taking care of yourself is the most important thing, one of the most important things in grad school. The other thing that I realized, apart from taking care of myself, like in 10 or 15 minutes, was like picking up a new or old hobby. So was during the lockdown, I started thinking, what was that one thing that I've always wanted to do, but I always stalled because I either didn't have the time or I always said I'll do it later. And then I thought, I said, I'm not artistic at all, but I always wanted to do something related to art. So there was a lot of trend of going about this 5D diamond art paintings, which again does not require lots of skill or investment. So I took up a project to fulfill one of the hobbies. And it just costed me $8. The whole set, I got it from Amazon. $8, and almost 12 hours later, I was able to finish my painting. And I was so proud of myself. And I have this painting hanged in my room. And every time I look at it, it gives me a message. And the message is patience and hard work yields beautiful results. So same way I was patient with this painting and myself, I'm sure grad school takes a lot. It requires lots of patience, but I'm sure it's going to yield beautiful results at the end, which would be very fulfilling. So the other thing I did during this isolation period was reconnecting with my family, like not immediate, but immediate family I was constantly in touch with, but my cousins, my aunts and uncles. After coming to United States, especially because of the time differences, I was not having enough time to communicate with them and check on them. And even my college friends that are from India. So during that time, I started reconnecting and talking to them. And that really was very fulfilling. And as a scientist, we always try to think, the reasoning behind it. And there's a scientific reason why reconnecting with people make you feel better. And the reason is it's been known that talking to your loved ones release, everybody knows about oxytocin. We know oxytocin as happy hormone, and happy hormone, it releases happy memories, and it kind of gives you another positive outlook to go back to the lab again and give your best. And if you are happy, you're going to be more productive. The other thing that I really started investing more time and seeking out was making new professional as well as personal connections during the social distancing period. Because we all know that because of social distancing, it's really hard. You cannot go in person and meet your friends or host events. So virtual way is the only way these days. But in order to utilize it, what I started doing was actually, in a sense, it's a good thing because you have an excuse of not seeing a person, but it gives you still a platform to talk to people virtually. So I started making more LinkedIn connections. And I think the only good thing that has come out because of this whole thing is having lots of virtual seminars and workshop platforms. And which allows you don't have to be physically, since you don't have to be physically present, you can be in your lab or, like you'll be doing an experiment, you have like incubation period, you can go in and check out various seminars and workshops which are happening not only on the campus or in the state, but across the country or even the world. And that really has helped me to expand my network and trying to talk to more people and listening to the talks which are not from my field, but still is relevant. And I have learned a lot during these. And the other thing that I did was signed up for GSPS Buddy. So this was basically initiated by Graduate School, and Charlotte is the one who is basically taking care of this. So what they do is, since again, we cannot meet people in person, they would virtually connect up two people randomly every week. So he or she is your buddy, and then you initiate the talk, check on each other. And it's kind of like another way to form more connections and keeping check on each other and being a support system of your own and for others. And the other thing that I really realized, which was really important, is to not hesitate to reach out for help and support. And we, like at UT Health Science Center, we have really excellent student counseling services. So I know they bring this up during the orientation, and when this was brought up, like I kind of ignored it, and I thought I would never like need it because I am fortunate to have a really good support system of my friends and family. But at one point, I think last year, it was really, really difficult. So I just decided to try it. And that was really like, sometimes you just need a professional to help, and they don't do anything. They just like make yourself like realize. And sometimes it's really nice to talk to a professional and get out and you start feeling better. So I still remember when I was sitting at the counseling service office, I was thinking to myself, what am I doing here? Should I be even here? But after talking to the counselor, and it was really helpful. So don't wait until the last moment to reach out for help. It's better to seek out for help earlier. And I also want to mention the app, which is called as Thrive at UT app. And you can download it on your phone. And it has amazing resources talking about self-care, how to take care of yourself, even I think scheduling appointments for counseling services or the services offered by them and workshops. So that's really important to seek out for help and support system in the grad school. And the most important lesson that I have learned is to not compare your journey to others. Because the beauty about doing a PhD is that everybody, you have your own project, you're the driver of your own project. Everybody has a different project. So you cannot compare like a journey of one person to other. It's just like you cannot compare an apple to a banana. Same way, you cannot think, okay, my colleague has 4 papers, I have 1 or nothing. You two have different journeys. You are both going to come out of the tunnel at the end, and you're going to have a story which is going to be unique to you and unique to like your own. And also at the same time, be kind to yourself and others, because you don't know, even if the person looks like, oh, this person is amazing, like, you know, he or she is getting so many papers out, so much of publications, you still don't know what their journey is. You don't know what are the demons they are fighting. So their struggles might not be similar to yours, but everybody has their own struggles. So do not compare your journey to others. You're going to have a beautiful story to tell at the end of your PhD, and that will be uniquely to you. And the most important thing, as I've been saying over and over again, seek out the support and be a support system for others. Because as we said, only a grad student can understand the pain of another grad student, or like the happiness. So it's really hard for me, like so my husband, he's not from biomedical sciences background. So like when I say, okay, my experiment didn't work, he doesn't understand what that means. Like, are you doing something wrong? Or like, what do you mean it does not work? So, and he's really supportive, but it's really hard for me to make him understand what a grad school life means. So it's good to have your own like buddy system where you can share each other's like stories and encourage each other's and be there for each other's. And I'm fortunate enough to have an amazing support of friends here at UT Health. And it's really important to have that. And this is, I just found this funny, I think. Do yourself a favor and like, you know, make sure you do not ask the students to a PhD student. And all that's kind of funny, but it is, I think, truth in some extent. I never, like when I was first year, I wouldn't understand why senior grad students would get upset when you ask them, hey, when are you graduating, or what year you are in? And now I understand what they must have been going through. So the basic take-home message that I want everybody to take from like today's talk is, you come first. Remember, every time you think, am I, you know, like suffering from an imposter syndrome, or like, am I fit, or like, you know, what am I doing here? Like, remember that you are a walking asset of $1 million. So, and what do you do with the $1 million? You take care of it. And it's really important. You come first. You won't be able to like run your project or work for the lab if you're not taking care of yourself first. So it's really important that you take care of yourself. Again, another thing I want you to remember is like, once you like, you know, after today or whenever, write down something like for yourself, like what can I do daily in 10 to 15 minutes to take care of myself, and start practicing. It doesn't have to be stressful. It can be as simple as, you know, like meditating for 10 minutes, listening to your favorite song, or like calling a loved one. It can be anything you want to do it for yourself. Effective communication. As I said, the small exercise that we did, if you have listed, you know what your challenges are, next step is start talking about it. Like, seek out people who can help you. If you've been having problems with the project, talk to your PI or anybody who will understand that, and come up with a new plan and a new strategy to like move forward. Talk to your loved ones, talk to your friends. Seek out help. As I said, do not wait until the last moment to seek out the help. And it's really crucial, even if it's a small problem, talk it out, because otherwise it's going to keep on escalating. Form your own support system. As I said, be a support system for others, and be a part of the support system. And always remember, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I still have to pass through the tunnel, but I know that I am going to go through that. And keep calm. Your PhD is coming soon. And you have to just like be patient and take care of yourself for that. And I really like this cartoon, which kind of depicts, this is me when going into the PhD. Like sometimes we have no idea what's going on. But as I said, you're going to walk out of the tunnel with a big smile on your face and having a doctorate. So with that, I would like to conclude my talk. And I would be happy to answer any questions. And most importantly, if there is, since we all are in the same boat, and I said everybody's journey is different. So if there is any advice or story that you want to share, which you think might be helpful to others, please go ahead and do that. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. So thank you very much for all of your time. I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Manpreet, for your presentation. I think you win the prize today for the most artistically beautiful slide presentation. So I think you do have a lot of creativity and artisticness in you. If anyone would like to unmute themselves or ask a question or just chat with Manpreet, you're welcome to. We have 5 minutes before we transition to our next speaker. Or perhaps you would like to take a break and take a bio break. That's fine as well. Lots of folks are saying in the chat, Manpreet, I'm sure you can probably see that. Good, I'm glad.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate that.
Except for Dr. Blake asking the question that should not be asked. We'll give her some demerits for that.
It's only safe to ask it now, that's why. Great talk, Manfred.
Thank you, Dr. Blake. Appreciate it. So good luck to everybody for the journey, I think. Yeah, and feel free to reach out or like share your experiences with the following grad students. I think. Thank you all for your attention. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for this, Manpreet. Great talk.
Thank you for the talk. I was going to ask, I know you shared the GSBS buddy. Do you know of any other associations, for lack of a better word, that's not just specific to biomedical students?
I don't think GSBS Buddy is just for biomedical students. I know if you email Charlotte, I think she will be happy to put people on the list. So I think this was like when lockdown started, it was a joint association of like students from UTESCA and UTSA. And I'm sure it's not just biomedical sciences because I've been friends with people from, I think even nursing school and even translational sciences and even at biomedical engineering at UTSA. So please email Charlotte and I think she would be happy to put you on the buddy system.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Anita, what are you? What program are you in?
I'm in UTSA, electrical engineering, sorry.
Engineering?
Said
Awesome.
that like you might know what that meant.
Thanks for coming, Anita.
Oh, thank you. Enjoyed myself so much today. Thank you.
With that, I would like to introduce our next speaker, which is Raksha. And I'm not going to attempt to say your last name because I think I will probably ruin it. And I would like to not do that for you. So I will let you announce that. And I look forward to hearing what you have to share.
Okay. So my name is Raksha Parthasarathy, and I'm a third-year graduate student here at UT Health in the IBMS program. I'm in the MIMG department, and today I'm going to be leading the international student discussion. And before I start, I would like to share my screen and make sure everybody can see it and hear me. So can you all see my screen?
Looks great.
Okay. So I was given this task of somewhat leading this international student discussion, and I think it's a very important thing to talk about, especially given the current situation. So I've titled this as Around the World in 30 Minutes, and it is not going to be a talk in the sense, but it would be more of a discussion. So feel free to unmute yourself and voice your opinions or questions. And hopefully this is going to be more of a discussion. So just to introduce myself, I traveled halfway across the world to start my PhD journey. So I moved from India to San Antonio, Texas. And on a good day, you can do this in 24 hours. On a bad day, it will take you 2 days. But this is my journey halfway across the world. So I moved from a city called Bangalore in South India, a green, vibrant city, to San Antonio, another great city. This was my journey moving from one city to another city. So thinking about this, I asked myself, how many of us make this journey every year? How many of us from all around the world enter the United States? The number is shocking, actually. So every year, there's more than 1 million students that enter the US. And recently, studies have shown that people who opt for optional practical training after their graduate studies is increasing at a rate of 10%, which is shocking, which also tells us that US has been welcoming so far, and it also has this huge international community. So I did a quick Google search yesterday. What is happening and what is the current political landscape for the international students? And as you all must be aware, a couple of months ago, or maybe a month ago, there was changes in the visa policies for international students, and that kind of put a lot of us on the spot. And it made our future look very, very uncertain. So this was a Google search from yesterday where, you can see that there can be more changes or there may not be more changes, and all of this is uncertain. So based on this is what I would like to start the discussion with. So feel free to jump in, and my first question to the audience would be, what are you reading? Or what are your sources to stay up to date on the international collaborations on STEM and the changing policies? Anybody? I can start. I just use Facebook and Twitter. Not the most reliable sources, but it's a source.
So one other good source, just to keep up with the news in general, you can read The Atlantic. So The Atlantic has a diverse range of topics, including they discuss like STEM fields and international affairs. And they also have student subscription rates that discount discount prices to being able to sign up for their website and being able to get full access to their articles. And their articles are always really well written too. And they take the time to go through sources, interview diverse groups of people. And so that would be my recommendation.
Okay, so that's great. We have another reliable source to catch up on now, but what do others read? Or do you just rely on social media like I do?
Hey, Shelby, I'm curious to know what you read.
So I was going to ask a clarifying question. Do you mean actual research collaboration or from an immigration perspective, Raksha?
From an immigration perspective. So maybe
Okay.
is the wrong word there.
So I'll turn my video on. Hello. So from an immigration perspective, I mean, our office gets updates usually directly from the institutions in the U.S. themselves. So U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, Department of Homeland Security, because I saw on your Google search from today the proposed rule about limiting the time students can be in the U.S. instead of duration of status. That comes directly from, we've been looking at that directly from where it was published on the Federal Register. And NAFSA, the Association for International Educators, is also a really great source. They do a lot of really great summaries of new legislation or proposed rules, like the one that was published today. So NAFSA is a great source as well. And we also watch the news and we look at social media as well, because a lot of times when you guys hear immigration updates, it's the first time we're hearing of them as well. And sometimes we hear about them from social media. And Laura just posted, Laura Paprada is also on in this session. She's the other advisor in our office. She just posted a link to our website with news where we've, she puts together some really nice summaries of immigration updates as well. So if you're a UT Health student, or even if you're not, you can also check there.
So we have reliable sources and social media. So that was my first question. And does anybody else have anything to pitch in? I'm curious what you read, Manpreet.
I haven't answered that. I don't actually. I've been really bad. I feel really terrible about that, but no, the bad news is so around, I kind of have my own bubble, I guess, but I don't have an answer. I'm sorry.
Yeah. And what about you, Sam? I know you keep up to date with the latest stuff.
Yeah, so I actually don't read it, I listen to it. So I've been attending webinars by, I guess, other institutions and immigration attorneys talking about what has happened in the past few months and earlier on, and then kind of where we are now. And I guess their main message is that if we were in the States before COVID, we should be fine in terms of traveling. But of course, if we were outside of the States, we would most likely have to come in on a J visa. But of course, I'm not an expert in immigration, so I would definitely say if you have any international questions, to refer to the wonderful people in the Office of International Services.
I will add one thing to it, Raksha, though. I have this Facebook group. It's kind of like a closed group for STEM peers. I think most of them, are in international, and when I say international, I would say 80-90% they are from India. So I think that's a group. It's a closed group, but I think anybody can invite anybody from STEM, and that's usually where I get most of the information, and most talking about collaboration and job postings, and even change in the visa laws. And that has been so bad recently that I've stopped seeing it, because every day I wake up, it's just something got another stress trigger. But I think that's my main source of keeping in touch with what's going around in STEM. for international.
I completely agree with you. Since there are changes every day, you don't know what change is the final change. So it's very hard to keep up. And I'm sure when the whole F1 and in-person visa status change happened, the OIS would have gotten a lot of emails. And if I'm not wrong, they might have gotten one from me too. So I think the OIS does a great job of keeping us updated as soon as they have a clear understanding of the changes.
I
So
would
if
like
there
to
is,
thank OIS is here. I want to really thank you all. I know like how hard you had to kept up, like, you know, like you like I think when the thing came up a few months ago, like the very next day in the evening, you made sure that, you know, sent out the email to everybody. And I think I really want to like use this platform to say like I really want to like appreciate all your efforts and like, you know, making sure that we don't lose or like our sanity and trying to be like on top of things and making sure updating us. So I really want to thank you all for doing all the hard work that you do.
Yeah, this is Laura. I want to just chime in a little bit. So I appreciate all the nice comments for our office. When policies or proclamations are issued, I know we get a lot of emails and phone calls prior to it because there's a lot of speculation, and we can't go off of speculation. We can't really provide any guidance. So our typical response is, you know, once something comes out, we're going to review it, digest it, and if it pertains to any of our international visitors, we're going to be communicating a message. And I know we've done that in the past with a couple of the proclamations that have come out. But when in doubt, always reach out to our office. We do collaborate with other institutions, like Shelby said. We also work with immigration attorneys. So if you have a question about your immigration status, or if something's coming up and you just want to know, hey, is this just speculation? Reach out to our office. I mean, we're the ones that you should be coming to.
okay. So any other answers? Any other comments? If not, then we can move on to the next question. So the next question, based off of the current landscape for international students, is what would labs look like without international students? And I would extend this question to international postdocs or anybody that works in a lab and that is international. So what do you think that lab would look like?
I'd be by myself.
Me too. I'd be all alone.
So I think it's like fair to say that a lot of people in STEM are international, and we make up a lot of this community. And this was something that I picked off of Twitter. And I think it's super important to have that diversity. And it's also very important to acknowledge that we are important. And, you know, you just can't ignore that international students, postdocs make up a lot of these labs. So you would be alone, but what else do you think would happen if you did not have international students around you?
I think it also has to do with collaboration. I know we have a lot of international visiting scholars, and we know how key collaborative work in STEM is. So one of the like ways to do collaboration is like by having like, you know, students going from here to some other country. That brings like a lot of exchange of ideas, and that what leads to collaboration. So I personally think that if there is like no international students coming or going, then you would also have lesser exchange of the ideas. And one example is COVID-19. Everybody is working towards like making a vaccine and working towards it. And it's possible because people are working like, you know, with each other. So if that stops happening, then I would see less collaborative work.
Definitely, definitely on the academic front. What would happen on your social front if you have no international representation? So what do you think that would look like?
Sam's putting some stuff in the chat.
Yeah.
I agree.
But also both academic and social. I wouldn't be as good of a communicator as I am, because it's, you know, having people from other countries and I explain something and they'll tell me like, I don't know what that is, or I don't know what that means, or, you know, we don't do this the same way in, you know, France or wherever it is. So learning how to explain things across different cultures has definitely enriched just the way I communicate.
I agree. It's very important, I think, to get that communication going and for you to be able to communicate your science or your thoughts across every sect or every culture or every country. Like, what if you're going into a conference tomorrow in like France, and if you had no exposure to international communities, you would, I think, have a tough time communicating those ideas across. And I think that is why we need to have a more collaborative and have more international representation across. So moving on to my next question is, how do we make sure the US still attracts STEM students from around the world, given what has happened over the past couple of months? Like, I have friends who are looking to do to pursue their graduate studies, but now they're thinking if US would be the right place for them, given how the visa rules are changing or how every other rule for job opportunities later is changing. Most of them are considering going to Europe or Australia to pursue the same graduate education which they wanted to pursue in the US. So this, I think, is a much broader question where everybody can chime in and tell us, like, how can the US still attract students?
I would say change the administration.
I think that is something that we don't have a lot of control on.
I'm like, I think I've told this several times. Talked about I am open to. I have my like backup plan like all planned out. So I know. I know. I don't know, as an international student, I think one example I would like to give though. So when they had that few months ago when they were trying to be sneaky and sent out that letter and didn't even like anything posted, but open about it, where they said that if everything is going to be virtual, then international students are going to go back. And I think they did it in a sneaky way where like they kind of only sent like letters to some of the institutes, but I saw like in 2 days, because of like LinkedIn resource or like networking, like people like raise their voices against it. And how like I think within a week they had to like, they like kind of change their decision, or like even the MIT or Harvard, I think when they like filed a suit against it, like, lawsuit, I think that was a really strong, like, so I know like as an international student, we didn't have in power, but just raising the voice, I think kind of like helped. And I think the people from STEM, I think, are really supportive here. And as long as we raise the voice and let them know like what's going on, I think we can get the help that needs. So I think if we cannot do any change, we can at least say how we feel about it.
Oh, definitely. And I think Sam brings up a very good point in the chat where she talks about labs advertising, and when they advertise, asking or specifically mentioning that they are looking for students irrespective of where they're from, domestic, international, it doesn't matter. And I think that's a good way to tell the students or people who are looking for positions that they are welcome, irrespective of where they're from. So I think when the whole visa restrictions changed, Twitter was the place where I was. Being on Twitter made me realize that a lot of the professors who have employed these people are very supportive, and they raise their voice, and they were writing letters to people saying, without this international community in our school or in my lab, it is practically impossible to run the lab. I'm sorry, the lights went out. Let me just get that.
If I might be so bold, I know I'm not really one of you. I'm just here facilitating, and I'm really grateful to have heard all of your stories. It's really inspiring to me. I don't come from academia. My family, I have no one in my family who's been in academia, but thank you, Sam. I just had a conversation with my white male brother and father this morning over on text, and it came to, they're both politically conservative, unfortunately, and it came to a discussion of nationalism versus globalism. And I come from a faith tradition that has, I think, unknowingly and I think very unethically promoted a narrative of globalism being something that's fearful. And I think as a person, as an individual, I've grown up in an environment where globalism has always appealed to me from the time that I was like a toddler going to Disneyland and going on It's a Small World. I wanted the hair of the doll with the black bob who was from Japan. And that was so not my hair. And, but always just loving and enjoying different things from different cultures. And so I would suggest hearing you all speak and hearing all of your journeys just makes me so in awe of everyone here and all that you're doing. I'm getting verklempt, but I would suggest, what if you all made a YouTube video? And you need to reach more than just academia. You need to reach people like me and my family that aren't in academia and who have been being indoctrinated with this lie that, that we need to be afraid, or people who've been indoctrinated with fear. And, like the question you asked, what would labs look like without international students? What would my community, what would my store, what would my pharmacy look like without international students? What would my healthcare experience look like without international students? What would my life look like without international people here? And, say it from the perspective of students, but I don't know. I don't know if that's, I know it's worth something, but, and I don't know if that's really the direction you all want to go, but I do really feel like as we're coming into the election, those are the minds and hearts who need to be won over, are the ones that have been so entrenched in hearing and being pumped with fear, and who are not in a place of academia, who do not have the habit of critical thinking, and gently leading them to that place, gently confronting their assumptions and their fears with the fact that international students and international people are people and have so much to offer us, and that we as a nation, I want, that's going to help make our country better, ultimately make our lives better by having more variety. So that's what I have to say.
Definitely, and I think it's a great idea, and I think it relates to the discussion we had this morning, where the take-home message from that discussion was to break bread with somebody who is not from your culture or your background. So I think it's more of people going out and talking to other people and just making sure that the other person knows we are just like you, and everybody is human and everybody is similar to each other, and you need to be more accepting. So I have another question here at this point, which is, how do we make sure the US still attracts STEM students? And this can be split into two perspectives. One from the perspective of an international student. What would attract you to come to the US? And one from the perspective of US citizens. What would you do, or what would you like to see change so that you attract more students to the US?
I'm sorry, actually, I was busy in the chat talking about TikTok. So were you asking again about how do we continue to make the U.S. an attractive?
Mhm.
Okay. So I actually wanted to ask a question for to the international students who are willing to answer. So like before I started graduate school, I had no idea about immigration, like how you would even I guess apply to work in the U.S. if you were from another country or anything. And I'm trying to learn from the
Oh, wait,
people
she just
around me.
responded. Hold on. She said
Oh, she walked over and just
she's in the same meeting as Alex. But she said if you can provide how the winners are to be identified. I don't know.
Blake, we can hear you.
Just tell her, I'll respond. I'll just tell her to send us.
I just muted her. Courtney, also your voice is super, super quiet. I don't know if you moved away from your mic or what, but if you could get closer.
I did. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Yay.
So is it helpful if your lab mates or your PI know about, like, I guess when you need to renew your visa or the different things you need, like, is that something that is helpful, or do you get enough support through OIS? Or would that be attractive? Like if you had a PI that, you apply for a job and they're like, hey, let me know, when you need my letter, what you want me to address. Like if they're already preemptive that way, is that helpful?
Yes, definitely. I think it is very helpful. The OIS already does a great job of guiding us through that whole process. But also sometimes when you need to renew your visa or something, it might require that you go back to your home country to do that. And you would need time off. And if you have a PI who understands that whole process, it's going to help you a lot more because, you're taking time off, but you're not taking time off as a vacation. You're taking time off to maintain your lawful status here in the US.
I think Samantha has a great point in the chat where she says that about the grants. As an international student, you're not eligible for like a lot of grants.
You got really quiet too, Manpreet. Can you get closer to your mic?
Sorry. So Samantha has a great point in the chat where she says that the downfall of international students is that we cannot apply for F grants except for F99 or K00. So we need to get funded. So I think that's one of the other reasons. Like I think I didn't know that like before coming here that like a lot of grants that we are not eligible to. I think that's another reason.
I think most of the NIH grants, right? Most of the NIH grants are for US citizens or permanent residents only. So yes, some extension in that would be great, where we could also apply to a couple of grants.
I can understand the hesitation of a certain PI who want to recruit an international student who's really good, but knows that this international student, might not be able to bring any funding of their own. So it's kind of like a hindrance where again, they really like the student, but there's a hindrance where cannot get any grant or funding for them.
Definitely. And now I think there is a prerequisite question of sorts. So I think this one's specific to the international students. What made you choose the US to pursue your higher education? You had everywhere, like all across the world to choose from, but you chose the US. So what attracted you to the US, and is that attraction still valid?
I can say from my experience, for me, when I was reading a lot of papers back at home, like even the books that I read, like DNA, we knew all that discovery came from labs in the United States, major, even the papers that I was reading. So I knew that STEM is really strong. The field I wanted to explore, I had more opportunities here. And that was, I think, one of my reasons why I came here to pursue my PhD, because I knew there is more opportunities with collaboration or doing what I really wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's still valid. I just don't like the ever-changing uncertainty of when I would be asked. But I'm not going anywhere before I get my PhD. I think this is one thing.
No, I think the school is also super supportive. So I think they are not gonna let us go before we get our PhD. So, you know,
uncertainty like that drives me. I don't want anybody to say, hey, you're out of your visa status today. So that's what concerns me.
I would like to keep the discussion going, but I think it's time. So I would like to end with the last slide where I just want to let all of you know that I'm the president of the Graduate Student International Club for this year. And as every president needs to do is plug their social media. So please, if you haven't followed us already on Facebook and Instagram, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram to stay connected. And we are also looking for features, and we would like all of the international students to know their fellow international students, even if it's virtual. And thank you for that discussion.
Thank you so much, Raksha, for your presentation, and the conversation was really eye-opening and life-affirming to me. So thank you. Our next speaker is Jody P. Gray. And Jody, I've made you a co-presenter, so you should be able to share your screen or your presentation. There you are. Hello, Jody, welcome. Thank you.
Okay, do I start or do we give people a minute or two to transition?
It's up to you. Why don't you go ahead and maybe just give a, 50-cent overview or however you feel like sort of
okay, sure.
transitioning into your talk.
Actually, I think I forgot to introduce myself in my morning talk today. My company, we moved offices today. So I've been in this room for less than 4 hours. You guys might hear hammering and power tools outside. Of course, it's wonderful. It's really great that we get to have a brand new office space, but I apologize for how hectic it is. I'm a little frazzled, but I'm really pleased to have been invited to come talk to Mikiten today. But I guess just to kill a moment or two, I am a recent graduate from UTESCA. I graduated this past May. So I don't really feel like I'm talking to all of you as like a seasoned presenter. It's more kind of like we're all students still. So I think you guys will pick that up in my style of speaking and presenting today. Yeah, and I'm really excited to share this topic in particular. I'm navigating the digital job market. As hinted, I'm a new hire here at this company, so I have been through this process very, very recently. I know how all-consuming a job search can be, and just this kind of feeling of what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? How do I navigate searching while I'm still in school? I mean, as if studying for your master's degree or PhD is not hard enough. Like I've got to search for jobs at the same time. So what I have today are really just a few different tips that I've used. I highly recommend. I hope that you guys find them helpful. My style, like my earlier presentation, is just going to be sharing my screen, showing you guys examples of tools that I recommend. I hope they give you some good ideas. Hopefully maybe help this process feel a little less overwhelming. So this talk, the Digital Job Market Search talk, I have it kind of in 3 sections. The first of which I'm going to use LinkedIn features for job searching. The second section is about using professional organizations for job hunting. And by professional organization, I mean being a member of a professional organization or a society. And then last, I will show a few features from personal websites to help supplement your job search. I gave a talk on personal websites this morning. So if you're in there, you'll see a little bit of the same features at the very end of this talk. But of course, it relates very strongly to searching for jobs and using the internet to help you do so. So my first point, which everyone I hope is thinking about, the right time to start looking and thinking about jobs is now.
Jody,
I would say no. Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but are you sharing your screen? Because we're just seeing your face right now. So I don't know if you were intending to share something, but we're not seeing it.
Okay. Nothing's showing.
Oh.
I'm not trying to show anything yet.
Okay, so I'm sorry. Thank you.
That's okay. Thank you. Thank you for helping. So you should be thinking about jobs right now, really, whether you are an early career, mid-career, and of course, if you're a late career graduate student, I'm sure you know how consuming these thoughts can be. Just as somebody who's been through this recently, especially starting at about a mid-career graduate student, I would say check in on the kind of digital scope of what's out there about once a month. I would say weekly or especially daily. That can get a little bit overwhelming. I don't want to add to your stress and your anxieties as you might be thinking about this and trying to study. But I think about once a month, starting in the mid of your career, is a good interval for kind of checking how the climate is. And what I mean by climate, if you're interested in, say, a particular university, or you have your eye on a particular city, if you do these kind of monthly check-ins, you'll start to get an idea of, how fast is the turnaround time for these job postings that I'm interested in. It would be very helpful when you actually do dive into the search to have an idea, are these positions getting snatched up very quickly? Do I have to prepare myself for a really rapid fire application and interview process? Or if you've been looking at it, do you have to prepare very, very far in advance? Do you have to buckle down for a very long wait to hear back? So that's why I'm suggesting at least a monthly check-in quite far in advance, so you get a feel of what I'm calling kind of the climate for these opportunities that you're interested in. You definitely do not want to be in any state of shock once it's actually time to apply. That's difficult enough. So now I am going to share my screen so you guys can just see web pages, hopefully. Gotta make sure I select the right one. Okay, hopefully you guys can see my internet browser.
Yep.
If somebody could confirm that for me.
Yes, we can see LinkedIn pricing structures.
Okay, yeah, unfortunately, the first thing I'm going to talk about is price. So I mentioned actually in my earlier talk as well, since we were talking about having unfortunately to pay for a web domain or service. I really hate that I'm having to recommend or show anything that has a cost tied to it at all, especially for graduate students. I've been there. It just makes me cringe to think about, oh my gosh, I have to pay for something else. But I also mentioned in the earlier talk, probably more so for a professional society membership, which we'll talk when we get to that section. But I would say if you are on a grant, maybe see if that could help fund your professional society membership. See if your lab or your mentor's funding source can help pay for memberships. Maybe not LinkedIn, but other career development related things. Students at UTESCA, see if you can apply to your student service fee allotment. If you really think that some kind of premium LinkedIn or other career development tool is something you need. Student leaders, Graduate Student Association, guys, so I know very well, this is a call to action. If you guys think LinkedIn premium is something that all of our students need, maybe this is something we need a petition for. But anyways, that's my disclaimer for feeling bad for recommending something that has a cost associated with it. But the good news is if you like anything you see on my LinkedIn tutorial today, you do have the option for a 1-month free trial for their premium subscription. And that's how I got hooked, actually. I was hunting for jobs. I said, let me try this 1-month free trial. And it did help me very much in my search. Okay. So now I'm going to just show you I'm going to go through a LinkedIn job search more or less. And I'm kind of harping on LinkedIn again, because I know how overwhelming our job searching can get, especially if you just sit down and Google and start searching for things. I recall looking for medical physics jobs and, Google would give me phlebotomist positions. So my point with LinkedIn is that I do think their algorithms are pretty good compared to other things that are out there. Google, of course, and even the other job sites like Indeed.com. Just in all of the hunting I've done, LinkedIn is definitely doing some things right. And then, of course, you can use these basic features with a free account. So with LinkedIn job searching, I've been pretty surprised at the kind of keywords and job titles that it is capable of. And the more that you build up your profile, the better these algorithms get at kind of matching your skills and recommending positions. So my LinkedIn suggestion is just for a first glance to hopefully not get you overwhelmed if this is your kind of first glance into hunting for jobs, seeing what's out there. So I'm going to do just a sample search. This is one I did earlier to make sure it would look good. I'm going to look up computer vision. So that's not really a job title, but that's a skill that I happen to know a lot about. So let's say I'm going to search for computer vision. And my current job here in Florida, I found it because I was searching within this city. So it's nice that LinkedIn can have those types of filters. You can see quite a few are available up top. And well, yes, this is evidence that LinkedIn algorithms are quite good just by entering computer vision, an image scientist. Yeah, that's a job that hypothetically I would want to be looking at. And so I'm going to scroll down. What you guys are going to see is a premium feature, but you do have a few of these that are available to you from the free account. Did I already say I'm not affiliated with LinkedIn? I'm just a happy customer. Okay, I'm not affiliated with LinkedIn, sorry. So for our premium subscription, it will do this kind of job skill matching with other applicants. This is old. When I first used this, it would actually give you green check marks comparing what the job position was requiring versus what you had on your profile. I liked the old one better. I don't really care about what the other applicants are doing. But anyways, whether you pay for premium or not, the more you populate your profile with these skills, LinkedIn is still using this matching in the background, whether or not you pay to see the reports. So going to my profile, the point here is that the more that you use the skills and really building up your LinkedIn profile rather than just putting your name and your picture up there and just leaving it to sit, I will scroll down to my skills section. Okay, and look at it, it actually recommends other skills based on my profile. So my overall suggestion with LinkedIn, in addition to using those filters that are really nice for your job searching, so you can start getting more recommendations that are relevant to you, building up these skills, make sure they're accurate for what you're actually good at and interested in. But their algorithms really are quite good. It's how I found my job here. It took a lot of stress off of the process because, again, just sitting down to Google tabula rasa, it can get very overwhelming very quickly. So I just wanted to show you guys a few of these features that are available on LinkedIn if you want to sit down and have a go at your first job search, or if you've been doing it for a while and struggling and feeling overwhelmed, but haven't used these features yet. So the second section, switching gears, I'm going to recommend using your professional organizations. So I'm sure no matter what field you guys are in, you know what the professional organizations are that are relevant and the big ones for your field. So who's your biggest society? What annual meeting do you and all of your lab mates make their annual pilgrimage to? So these professional memberships, they do often have career sections where jobs and postdoctoral positions are posted. Again, we've mentioned a membership to a society like this. It does often have a fee associated with it. Usually it is going to be discounted for students, so that's good. And a lot of the time, if you are a student member and then your organization is hosting a conference, it'll also get you reduced rates for your conference fees. And then finally, again, I mentioned grants a lot of the time, not all the time, but a lot of the time grants can help cover these professional membership fees and your conference fees and whatnot. So if you're interested in helping get your fees covered, do some sleuth work. Hopefully you can have some support. Okay. And for an example, sorry guys, I'm gonna have to show you, oops. I wanted to show you guys signing in. Well, anyways, I'm gonna have to show you an example that's specific to brain mapping because that is what I studied. And so OHBM, Organization for Human Brain Mapping, that was our society, our annual meeting that we all go to. And so this is one of the societies that I subscribe to every year as a student member. I don't think fees were in excess of maybe $80 or so a year. So for having access to the Career Center, which I will now show you, and of course discounted rates for other things through OHBM, it is a worthwhile investment. If you need help with these fees, talk to your student leadership and admin. So here I am in the OHBM Career Center. I'm going to just go and look at all jobs. And you can see many postdoc positions tend to be what I've seen on the professional organization websites. And I will say from just personal experience, postdoc positions are even harder to find on Google, harder to find on Indeed, and not as prevalent on LinkedIn. So if postdocs are something you're interested in, it does seem to be the trend that your professional organizations are listing a lot of those online. And also with postdocs, also from my experience, other than looking at them through these professional websites, a lot of it seemed to be kind of word of mouth. You know, I heard so-and-so's lab is looking for a postdoc next year, or if you're interested in, I don't know, Stanford, well, are they taking postdocs this year? Yes, no, I don't know. Who do you know? These professional websites, they tend to be about as centralized as you can get. If anybody has experience otherwise in finding good postdoc listings, please put it in the chat or, you know, chime in at the end. This is just one example. Yeah. Oh, okay, and actually I have a story for this webpage here. So I do recommend 1 month check-ins or so, starting pretty much immediately. Again, just to get a good idea of how fast these jobs are turning around, how quickly are they getting snatched up? Is there a lot of competition out there? So I remember frequently visiting the OHBM webpage, probably starting at least 2.5 years ago. I would kind of do my monthly check-ins. And I remember reading these postings, you know, they're all in neuroimaging and brain mapping. And I was, you know, reading the skills and the job functions and the duration, where I'd have to go. And I just remember none of them really spoke to me. I wasn't really like getting excited about them and jumping out at them. And I realize now that was just an early sign into what my career trajectory should be. So here I am now today working in industry. It turns out that my kind of job hunting from 2.5 years ago, it was kind of giving me a clue about where I should look instead. So do keep pulling all of your resources, dig everywhere, and do listen to your gut. It's okay if these jobs don't jump out at you, but a different class does. But the more studying and the more researching you do, the better. Okay, and sorry for anyone who listened to today's earlier talk. My third kind of point is using and leveraging personal websites and personal brandings to aid in your job search. So I gave a talk that was a little more detailed this morning about just building personal websites. But for this final piece of the job market hunting, I just wanted to show you 2 tools from personal websites that can help. But in general, if you did not attend the earlier talk, personal website is just a really great way to kind of own your own digital footprint. If you're on social media and really just the internet in general these days, you cannot control what is out there about you. So if your future employer or colleagues were to sit down to Google, you would want them to be happy about what they come across, and what could be better than a website with your own domain name that you design, that you completely control, for which you can put your best foot forward. Websites are fun. You can see I've got links all throughout mine, lots of photos. The more photos, the better. This is a very dynamic and interactive environment, unlike just, you know, a stagnant resume. Here, we can even look at my resume and get bored if you would like. See, no pictures or links or anything. This is the most boring page on my website. So I'm sure you can see how useful a tool like this would be in navigating your online job search. So the first tool that I wanted to show, and from personal experience, this one was quite useful for me. So at the bottom of my webpage, I have my map widget here. And so this, it looks cool visually. Oh, and I see some people in Texas were looking at my website today. So you guys can see where I'm going with this. It looks cool. I get to show how much activity is propagating on my website over time. However, this is even more useful if, say, I just sent out a bunch of applications to, I don't know, 4 different universities all over the world. If you've ever been in my shoes like this, which I'm sure you've had, you've sent something off and you've just been sitting there wondering, are they even looking at it? You know, what is my status? When I've sent out emails with my resume, cover letter, and then a copy of my link, it can be kind of cool to sit there and look and see, oh, wow, you know, the folks in Stanford, it looks like they're passing around my webpage. I can see a lot of activity coming up. So I don't want anybody to get too obsessive over a tool like this. You can go quite down a rabbit hole. But in general, knowledge is power. So this can be leveraged for you to see how well the things you send out are being received. And then my second tool, I'm going to show another web page. This is from Dr. Teresa Evans. She's also a UTESCA affiliate and a very fantastic lady. So she, at the bottom of her page, she advertises a lot more of her consulting services on her webpage. And at the very bottom, she has a contact me section. So there's no reason if you had a personal webpage of your own that you couldn't change this contact me here to a banner that says, yes, I'm currently searching for opportunities. If you see anything on my website that you have questions about or you think is cool, you just want to interact with me, yes, I'm open to being contacted about job opportunities. Please email me. And this is a nice private way to do so as well. You can see we don't have Dr. Evans' direct contact information listed anywhere. So she's got some kind of a widget here that allows the interface just to send the contacts directly to her email without actually having to post any of her personal information out there online. Okay, so I think that was my last example, and wow, I really blew through the time here. If anyone has any questions, or, I mean, I know this talk was really just a snapshot of things that I've had experience with and I've liked. I didn't show you anything that I didn't like, of course, I talked about them a little bit. But I suppose since we have some extra time, if anyone has had success with other websites, other services, if you want to pop them up in the chat window, if you want to unmute yourself and just kind of start a conversation, we could do that too. And if anyone wants links to anything that I've shown here, I'd be happy to post those in the chat section as well. Oh, and actually, I see we have some UTESC admin in here with us today. You all are welcome to chime in if you have any words of wisdom in our last few moments about job searching, specifically in the digital market.
I'm talking and unmuted. I would just also throw out the National Postdoc Association, especially if you're looking for postdoc positions. Most schools, and definitely UTL San Antonio, are institutional members, which means you can join for free as an affiliate. And they do have a jobs board on their website, but then they also offer some professional development programming and resources as well. So as a graduate student, you can still take advantage of that. So it might be
Is this, sorry.
Yeah.
Is this limited to biomedical science professions, or is it just kind of all across the board?
It is primarily biomedical science. They are trying to, well, they are inclusive, but there just hasn't been a lot of interest from humanities postdocs and such. There's probably a fair amount of engineers in there, and the schools join as a whole. So it is open to everybody. But I think just historically, it's been more focused on biomedical scientists.
Okay, well, that works for our crowd, so I'm satisfied today.
Yeah, but definitely the professional organizations, I think, is a huge resource, and definitely take advantage of that because it's usually very specialized in your field as well.
I would say, first of all, hi, Judy. How are you doing? This is Jessica Newt. I would say another really important part of using a lot of these services is, not to put too fine a point on it, but cyber stalking the people that you're applying to get an understanding of what their facility's like, who are the people there, maybe even take Google for a tour around their campus and get an understanding of how things are arranged. Because in my experience with interviews, getting the bite and applying to the job is half of it, but the other half is, of course, nailing the interview and securing the position. And the more information you can find about your potential employer and the potential job you would have, the better, to be able to ask smart questions in the interview and have a sense of what to expect when that first call arrives. And so I think a lot of these services can be really, really beneficial in that part of the job hunt as well.
Sorry, I was fumbling to get my mute button unmuted. Thank you, Dr. Newt. That's a good suggestion too. So I suppose if there are no more questions, I might sign off. Give everyone a bit of a breather. I suppose you guys have been sitting through a lot of talks. There were 3-minute theses earlier today. Is that right?
Yes, this morning.
Yeah. Okay. Well, enjoy the rest of the conference schedule today, everyone. Thank you so much for attending. Feel free to email me at any time, jodypgray@gmail.com, like my website. That's evidence of building your personal brand. Easy to remember. Happy to talk with any student at any time. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gray. Our next speaker is Maria Cheney, and we do have 5 minutes, which is actually really nice. All of our presentations today have been back to back to back to back to back. So I encourage anyone who needs to step away from your computer or at least stand up for a moment. Get a drink of water, stretch your body a little bit. I'm going to do that. And at the top of the hour, we will hear from Maria. Maria, you are now a co-host. And so if you would like, you're welcome to start sharing your screen. If you have any kind of a presentation that you're going to want to share, you can go ahead and get that set up and test your mic, things like that. Hello.
Great, wonderful. Can you hear me okay? I'm using headphones, so
loud
I
and
just want to
clear.
make sure.
Yep.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
So I'll be back when it's time to start.
Sounds great. Thanks.
All right, we are at the top of the hour. So Maria, this is Maria F. Cheney. Dr. Maria F. Cheney, PhD, will be our next speaker. Take it away.
Great, wonderful, thank you. So today, what I wanted to talk a little bit about is the transition from an academic research to an industry role, kind of using my career path as an example. And I've got my contact information here and my current title. I also do have the chat box open, so if you don't feel like unmuting or talking and you just want to send me a chat or send the group a chat, I'll keep an eye on that for any questions and comments going through. And if at any point you can't hear me well, you know, don't hesitate to just send that in the chat box as well. So again, I'm currently a senior principal scientist or medical director, clinical director with Merck. I work in the external collaborations group, which is within our early oncology development. My entire career has been in oncology. So again, some of what I say is a little bit biased toward the oncology therapeutic area, but I think it's also applicable to other therapeutic areas as well. Just so a quick objective for what I want to present to you all today is I want to present, you know, why industry? What about academia? Why did I choose the path that I chose at going into industry? And then what jobs are there in industry? What I find is that there's a broad range of jobs within industry, and there's kind of a lack of awareness of all the different jobs, all the different career paths that you could potentially go into within industry. So I just want to touch briefly on a number of different jobs. You know, I've got a bunch of them listed here. There's other niche jobs that I don't have mentioned, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, again, in chat or contact me after the talk. Namely, the areas that I see most PhDs or other postgraduate students go into include discovery, R&D, clinical development, which is where I currently sit, regulatory, which is your interactions with your health authorities, such as the FDA and EMA, health outcomes, HUR, health outcomes and economic outcomes, or economic research. That's kind of a new area that's starting to be up and coming. There's always a great need for medical writing and scientific communication. So if that's an area that you're drawn toward, please look into those jobs. Medical affairs. I have spent most of my career within the medical affairs group, both as an MSL and in a few other positions. So I'm very familiar with medical affairs, which I think broadly is related to scientific communication, to prescribing physicians, and support of later stage research. Business development is also an interesting area that that people with PhDs tend to work in. And in my current role, I actually work quite a bit with business development, my business development colleagues, working with small biotechs and looking at programs that we might be interested in bringing to Merck. And then project management and alliance management. And then, of course, commercial support. We're actually seeing more and more PhDs that are getting into the marketing areas of commercial support. So I want to touch on some of these jobs just to give you a flavor of what's really out there. Also, I want to provide a few helpful hints to obtaining your first job in industry. Industry in general is a little different from academia. Some of the skill sets are a bit different. You know, no one really cares that you are just awesome at doing a Western or running some specific assay. But communication, both written, verbal communication is a skill, I think, across all of these jobs that you'll see as being very impactful within industry. And I do want to make sure we leave plenty of time for Q&A. I've got a couple of questions that we can start with, but again, I'm happy to just throw all those aside to any questions that you all may have for me in terms of my thoughts on industry and industry roles. So first, who am I? I graduated quite a long time ago. Won't really discuss my age, but graduated with a PhD in cancer biology from UTMD Anderson, the GSBS in Houston. After that, I wasn't sure exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't know where I wanted to go. I had started working a little bit with Dr. Lee Ellis, and so I continued that work in my postdoc fellowship. And that was my first taste of really working with industry. Again, this was 2002 to 2004, where academia, I think, collaborated even more strongly in the preclinical space with industry than maybe they do now, although there's definitely very strong collaborations that occur. During that time, I worked closely with a small biotech, ImClone, which you may know from the whole Martha Stewart thing, and then also AstraZeneca. And those experiences really influenced me in terms of my career path, in that I wanted to get out of the lab. I was very interested in translational biology, and I became more and more interested in clinical research. Dr. Ellis is a surgical oncologist, and during my time with the grad school, I actually worked with Dr. Ellis to create a class in which PhDs were taught a little bit more about the clinic. What's standard of care for melanoma? What's the difference between a CT and an MRI? Some very basic things that at the time we really didn't get a lot of exposure to within the programs. I think that's changed. I see more translational research in current programs, but again, I think that, again, that was very impactful for me in my career, influencing me in the path that I eventually took towards clinical development. So in 2004, I began exploring various careers and looked into what Merck termed a clinical science liaison. It was actually called a health science associate initially, but it was an MSL, medical science liaison-like position. I'll tell a quick story about that role. I actually applied online. My resume didn't make it, but the new head of Merck at the time was someone I had known from AstraZeneca. So I shot him an email, said, hey, I applied for this job, and I ended up getting the job. I found out later that my resume cover letter never made it through HR to the hiring physician. And it was only the fact that I knew someone within the company that helped me to get that job. So one theme that you'll hear throughout my talk is that, networking is absolutely key and critical. After many years at Merck, we were a very small team initially. At that time, again, I think that's before MSL positions really blew up. We were like 5 to 9 people covering the entire US. So there was quite a bit of travel involved, but it was fun. We supported the pipeline. Merck didn't have a lot of oncology products at the time. This was before pembrolizumab. And so I learned a lot with that job and that role. Novartis came, I received, a couple emails, things like that. I knew Novartis was looking for an expansion. And so they reached out to me, and I eventually transferred from Merck to Novartis, partly just to experience another company, and partly because my territory that I covered as an MSL dramatically decreased in size. And as you can see, my kids, my boys especially, were very small at that time. And the travel was starting to be a little bit much. Again, the position that I currently have as a clinical director came available, and I found out through a colleague of mine, an old friend from Merck, and they reached out to me and said, hey, Maria, I think this is something you might be interested in. Take a look, let me know what you think. And again, with that position, if I hadn't had the network that I did, I don't know that I'd be doing what I am right now. And again, I'm a clinical director. I work on clinical trials, and I work very closely with small biotechs and other pharmaceutical companies and doing combination studies, majority of which are with pembrolizumab or Keytruda, and the combinations with various other immuno-oncology targeted therapy and oncology agents. I've published quite a bit, mostly in my pre-doc and my postdoc. I've recently, as part of this new role, gotten to publish a little bit more. Typically, as an MSL or a clinical science liaison, medical science liaison, you really won't publish because of the just really what the job entails. So if publishing is something that's important to you, that may also sway you more toward a clinical development role rather than a medical affairs type of role or a commercial role. And then just to, on top of that, I've got 4 kids. You can see pictures. My husband has his own career, and there's a lot of things I love. I love to grow plumerias. I love to ski, World War II history and submarines, and traveling in non-COVID times. So that's just a little overview of who I am and how my career has gone so far. So why industry? I kind of hinted at this in that with industry, when I was in the lab, I was frustrated with the pace. I felt like I really wanted to reach out. I wanted to help the patient more. And I really struggled with that. So as I progressed in the lab, my research became more and more translational. And then eventually it's led that to where I am now. Merck personally has always appealed to me. There's actually, this is the famous quote by George Merck. I thought it was a little cheesy initially, I'll be honest. But I wondered, does industry really believe these words? And the longer I've been in industry, the more I see that there is definitely a passion for the patient. The patient is foremost. And you'll see that, even in the commercial setting, but definitely in the clinical development, the clinical development setting, we very much are looking for unmet medical needs and where else can we take these drugs and what other patients can we impact. So this quote has always really appealed to me. At one of the sites at Merck outside of Philly in Upper Gwinnett, there's this huge banner when you walk in and this quote is on it. So it's kind of nice. There are different cultures across different companies and within different therapeutic areas. So, not everyone will have the same culture, but, I've spent more than 10 years now at Merck and I definitely have seen the culture. Novartis also, I definitely felt that there was a passion for the patient. So that's something that definitely influenced me. When I first went into industry, people made comments like, oh, you're going to the dark side. And there was some negative connotation. And you have to learn how to deal with that and have a little bit of thick skin. But I think at the end of the day, the relationship between academics, academic physicians and researchers and industry is critical for us to make an impact on all of the diseases that we're looking at. And I think this is coming across in the COVID era too, looking at how the biotechs and the pharma, how the collaborations have gone and how necessary and critical academia is as well. So we're all in this together. Okay, so I wanted to spend a few minutes, and I'm trying to keep track of time, on the major categories of industry jobs. Again, some of these I've worked in, some I have not, but I have them listed here. There's a number of jobs, discovery and R&D. I know that in my current position, I do work with my discovery colleagues. They're very important to us in terms of interpretation of data. There's a lot of back and forth between the discovery group and early oncology clinical development, especially. We're looking for biomarkers. We're looking for hints of activity with various combinations, where not to go. That's a key aspect of discovery and R&D is what combinations do we not want to look at? What tumor types are not necessarily going to be impactful for these jobs. Clinical development is where I currently sit. I'm in our early oncology space. For oncology, with most major pharmaceutical companies, you'll have early clinical development groups and late clinical development groups. And within early oncology, we're looking for what we call POC, or proof of concept. That this drug and this tumor type actually works, or this combination actually works. And we're looking at efficacy, we're looking at toxicity. How do you manage the toxicities that we see with a drug, either as a single agent or in combination? And then in late clinical development, a lot of work is being done trying to develop what's your phase 3 study? How do you design that? how do you have an impact globally? It's not just the US market that we look at. You really have to know what's going on within your therapeutic area, within the global space. So understanding that is also very important, and interacting with your health authorities, with the FDA, with the EMA, and that's where your regulatory points come in. And there's a number of PhDs within our regulatory groups as well. So that's something where you can take basic science, translational research, and then move it into regulatory interactions. Health outcomes is very important. Much of drug development and reimbursement is driven by health outcomes. It's not enough just to have an impact on the patient, but you have to know how much longer are you making in oncology, how much longer are you making that patient survive, what patients may do better with the drug versus other patients. The payers, the insurance companies, the governments, they really want this information, and it's becoming a very critical part with drug development. Medical writing and scientific communication is also very important. Some people refer to it as ghost writing. There's vendors that large pharma and small pharma will collaborate with. If that's a job you're interested in, I would encourage you, LinkedIn is always a great place to start, but also look at presentations that are given at key congresses. Like, for oncology, our key congresses are ASCO, AACR, ESMO. If you look at an industry talk, usually the last slide, I'm not sure exactly why they do this, but whatever vendor helped to make those slides, you'll see the name of the person, and using that information, if you want to reach out to someone, find that information, say, oh, I saw that you supported a talk that was given at ASCO on XYZ, and reach out to that person and have a discussion with them about medical writing and scientific communication. Medical affairs, I noticed that on the agenda, there were a couple of other MSL, medical science liaison talks. So I don't want to go too much into that because you can definitely learn more by those specific MSL talks. Again, I was a MSL for 15 years or so, and I've watched it develop through the years. Like I said, initially at Merck and major pharmaceutical companies, there were very few MSLs that covered the US or a territory, and now it's not uncommon for an oncology MSL team to be 100 MSLs. So it's definitely changed. There's a bit more commercial support, I would say now. There's definitely still research. Medical affairs and the MSLs are really key critical components for supporting investigator-initiated studies. So really what you'll see is they'll support phase 3 trials, and then once a drug is approved, they will support continued research into that drug in terms of phase 4 or studies in which the academic center, the academic physician is the sponsor. And that's in contrast to where I sit currently, which is clinical development, in which Merck or the pharmaceutical company or the biotech is the sponsor, holds the IND, and is responsible for all the aspects of the study in terms of clinical monitoring. Also, I briefly mentioned business development. So business development is a key conduit between small biotechs and large companies, in terms of collaborations and co-development deals, and even commercial collaborations. And it's an interesting part, and there are a number of PhDs that are within our various business development teams within Merck. And again, having that deep scientific understanding and then also understanding the business is something in which you can really make a niche. And it's an interesting group. And again, I'm happy to expand on this more during our Q&A session. Project management and alliance management. This is one of the project managers within our team is actually a PhD organic chemist by training. And they're very important in terms of our team, in which we are all able to focus on the certain aspects of our jobs, and they kind of keep the large-scale focus, insight, and keep us all on track. And then in commercial support, and namely, I see more PhDs in marketing type roles in terms of post-approval marketing and marketing support. Again, I think I've mentioned a couple of these. I just wanted to touch on, two of the jobs that I did within the medical affairs group at Novartis. I did an early development scientific innovation job in which I supported the early development, early oncology group at Novartis, again, from a medical affairs standpoint. Also academic medical strategy, again, looking at the differences between a community oncologist versus an academic oncologist at a key cancer center like MD Anderson, Memorial Sloan Kettering. So we were looking at the strategy and what the strategy should be for scientific communication within these various groups. So helpful hints, and I definitely want to leave time for questions, but the biggest thing is network. Just network as much as you can. LinkedIn is great. Go see local talks, departmental talks, attend webinars, go to conferences. If you want to talk to someone that's an MSL, go to the Congress of your therapeutic area, ASCO, AACR for Oncology, ESMO, and go to the pipeline section of these booths. Many times that's the MSL. Go talk to them, ask them how they are. We're bored a lot of times hanging out at the booth. So the MSL usually is pretty interested in, fine talking with you. Reach out on LinkedIn. There's a number of people that really enjoy mentorship, and it's really helpful to help you get that job. I've seen scenarios where, doing an expansion of 12 MSLs across the US and we will get 300 applicants. If you don't have some foot in the door, if you don't have a network, then it's hard for you to even get an interview. What I usually tell mentees is, if you see a job, you apply. If I know someone from the company, let me know. And then if it's a job, say within Merck, I ask you to send me a kind of a more formal email. Hi, Maria, it was great talking to you. As we discussed, here's the job that I'm interested in, I applied for. And then maybe, this is your chance to sell yourself, just another paragraph or so of why this is a really great job for you. And it enables me to take that really nice email and just forward it on to the hiring manager. Hey, I know this person, they're great, give them an interview. And then from there, I can help, or your mentor can help with that. But those little things can really help you get past that first hurdle. Learn as much as you can wherever you can. In this job, again, I'm not an MD, but I'm in a position where the majority of my colleagues are MDs. I have spent countless hours trying to understand, learn clinical oncology, making sure that I know the terms, I know the phrases, I understand the toxicities. Nobody has given me a booklet and said, here's how to be, a clinical director, read this. I've had to learn it on my own. You have to own your own knowledge and never, ever stop. Keep learning. There's a number of industry websites, Fierce Pharma, Biospace. If you want to learn about industry as a whole, follow those. Just see how things go on. There's even like on Biospace, they'll say, oh, so-and-so's moved from this job to this job. You learn the people, you learn the lingo, and it's very interesting. From a clinical perspective within oncology and also other therapeutics, I've utilized CME websites, clinical care options, things like that. And I spend a lot of time just learning. Understand your individual strengths and weaknesses. Again, I'm not a clinician. I have never treated an oncology patient. I will not treat an oncology patient. I have to understand where my weakness is and really try to fill that gap and lean on my colleagues around me when I need to. But I also know my strengths. I understand the oncology landscape, every tumor type. I know that I can communicate well. So I draw on my strengths as well. And then don't be intimidated by job descriptions. The job I currently had on it, it said requires an MD. Here I am, I'm a PhD, I have the job, right? So don't be intimidated by it. Use a cover letter to sell yourself. Reach out as much as you can. So, so I think with that, I have about 6 minutes left, and I really want to open this up for Q&A. I've put a couple questions here. If we don't get any questions, either on chat or just, feel free to unmute yourself and ask me any questions that you might have. Thank you all. Any questions? Anyone?
Yeah, so hi Maria, this is Catherine.
Hi, Catherine.
It's a great talk. And I was wondering, since I've gotten the opportunity to ask for a referral, and it's been really great that people have been able to pass it on to a hiring manager. Are there situations or types of people who might not know the hiring manager who is reviewing for that particular position? Like, is there something I should watch out for or check?
So you mean like if I didn't know the hiring manager?
Yeah.
I would still just send it and say, hi, I work in early oncology development. I know you're in this group, and, just even in a large company, I would say the majority of the people that I email with, even on a daily basis, I haven't met face to face. So there's, again, with the COVID, the remote work style that we've had to all deal with, even before that, I personally have always worked remote. I'm very comfortable with that. And I think a lot of my colleagues are as well. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. And if I don't know someone, someone I know probably will. Again, and part of that is just I've been in the industry so long, and it's a very small world at the end of the day. So that's my other little piece of advice is it's a very small world. Don't ever burn a bridge. I started at Merck, I left, I came back. I obviously did not burn bridges when I left Merck the first time. So networking is really critical.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Hi, Maria.
Hi, Melody.
I'm just gonna pick on one of the questions that you have listed there,
Yes.
something that I'm interested in, which is how easy is it to switch between jobs within industry? So say you do get a job within medical affairs, you realize that's not at all what you thought it was gonna be, you're not that interested. How easy is it to make a lateral move within the same company if you really like the company culture, but to a different position?
Absolutely, that's a great question. I think it's very easy. I will say it's, many companies, not all, especially the larger companies, will have stretch assignments. And I currently am working on a stretch assignment right now just to gain a little more experience in another area. And in that, you get to try something else. And I know a number of our MSL medical affairs colleagues, I've seen them do stretch assignments, say in global development or in other areas, marketing, just to, again, kind of put your foot in the door and give it a shot. I have a number of colleagues that have switched completely. If I look at the original group of us, say the 5 of us that started the Merck MSL oncology team, all 5 of us are doing something different. And actually, gosh, all 5 of us are still with Merck, kind of weird. But we're all doing something different. One is doing a global position. She actually moved to Copenhagen from the US. Yeah, exactly. So a couple of us are in clinical development. So I think it's very easy. Companies want to know that you understand the company and that you understand industry in general. So it's something that, again, get your foot in the door, give it a shot. And like I said, there's such a huge list of positions in industry. So you don't have to be married to something for forever. You get in, try something for a year or 2, and then you can definitely switch.
Awesome, thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions? One question I'll just touch on since I have a minute left. How critical is a postdoc? I get that a little bit. I think a postdoc is important sometimes. And, if your goal is to get into clinical development, I would actually suggest that you look at a study coordinator position, a clinical coordinator position, instead of a postdoc. And many of the academic hospitals do hire PhDs, and at MD Anderson specifically, the investigator ICT department, the phase 1 department, hires quite a few PhDs from the GSBS. And if your interest is clinical development, I think that that's a very good role for you to have.
Thank you so much, Dr. Cheney, for sharing all of this helpful information. It is time for us to switch over to our final presenter, which is Sam Yee. And Sam, you can go ahead and start getting your screen set up. And there we go. We can see your presentation. Fantastic. All right, take it away, Sam Yee.
So, hi everyone. My name is
Actually, your
Sam
sound is a
Yee.
little bit low.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
We can. Let's see. Go ahead.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, that's great. Thank you so much.
Sure.
No problem. Carry on.
So, okay, thank you. So I am a 4th year PhD student in the Graduate School of Biomedical Sciences at UT Health San Antonio in the Integrated Biomedical Sciences program. And so I am currently working on ovarian cancer and trying to find an optimal drug that will circumvent drug resistance. And so today I will be talking about work-life integration and making the most out of graduate school. And so the overview of today's presentation will be topics to address: what is work-life integration, a breakdown of the calendar, and a work-life integration mantra, which I made, which is plan, prioritize, and patience. And then lastly, we'll summarize and have a discussion and plenty of time before Dr. Weiss announces all the winners. And so topics to address today and some questions, first of all, is what is work-life integration? What are activities outside of research and the lab that contribute to a healthy and happy life? What are resources and strategies for making me time a priority? And lastly, what can we do to make the most out of graduate school? So first of all, what is work-life integration? So a lot of the time, and before these recent years, we've heard a lot about work-life balance. And so the concept of that came from basically having work and life on a scale, and essentially they should weigh the same. But in reality, work-life balance is really hard or unable to achieve. And so the new norm is work-life integration. And so integration comes from to integrate or to harmonize. So on the left here, we have, if you can see my mouse, you see the seesaw, and then it becomes a yin and yang with work and life, which is a lot more achievable and realistic. And so here's an example of a calendar. So basically, depending on who you are, you could be super, super busy, and having a calendar is a great way to organize things. And so I like to do a fun breakdown because a lot of us are scientists, but also putting numbers to what we're talking about is great too. So there's 24 hours in a day, and we have 7 days a week. So there's a total of 168 hours. Okay, so for students, we spend a majority of time in lab where it could span from 40 to 60 hours. And I do acknowledge that some students are in lab for 80 hours, but I'm gonna go with the 40 to 60 for this talk. And so if we have a total of 168 hours minus the maximum that I included here of 60 hours of lab, we have about 108 hours left. And so for students who do love their sleep like me, I like to have at least 8 hours. So 8 hours of sleep times 7 days equals 56 hours. And so if you take the 108 hours left that we had before minus the 56 hours, you have about 52 hours for miscellaneous. And what do I mean for miscellaneous? So that would include eating, cooking, cleaning, showering, working out, grocery shopping, etc. So things that are essential for sleep hygiene and also to keep you up and going. And so some tips and tricks that I personally like to use is to minimize social media. So a funny story is that my lab doesn't have great cell service. So I store my cell phone in the cell culture hood area and I store it in a drawer. So basically I do minimize my social media and texting. And so it allows me to have at least 1 to 2 hours per day to do something I love or want to try. So let's say you want to do something for 2 hours a day, and if you times it by 7 days, you have about 14 hours to do whatever you love. And like Manpreet's talk earlier, like make sure you do things that really take care of yourself because you are a walking asset. And so from the miscellaneous 52 hours total minus 14 hours, you still have 38 hours left over. And so my mantra for work-life integration that I think is really helpful and easy to remember are the 3 Ps. So plan, prioritize, and patience. And I'll break each of them down. So plan, so short term, so daily and monthly. So you can use your Outlook calendar. You can also use a planner, agenda, whiteboard, phone alarms, whatever works for you. And then for long term, such as yearly or 5-year plan or 10-year plan, you can also use the same resources as above, but something great that has been created is the IDP, and that's a great resource. And so a little background is that the My IDP, so its individual development plan, was developed by a team of scientists and career advisors, including some staff from UCSF, from their Office of Career and Professional Development. And so My IDP is great because you can set goals for research projects, explore a full range of career options, and it involves a 4-phase process such as self-assessment, career exploration, goal settings, and implementation. And once again, if you were at Manpreet's talk earlier, they do talk about SMART goals, so making goals that are realistic. And so, sorry, on this slide, at the bottom I included to plan early. So for example, I have a grant that is due November 18th. However, I am planning to have my actual deadline be November 11th, a week before, in case there are technological issues. So always plan ahead because life can certainly get in the way. And so the second P is prioritize. So the average for a graduate student is 5 to 6 years for a PhD. However, this can be personalized to your own plan. And so also there's 2 years for a master's. And so when you prioritize, you can make it schedule oriented based on deadlines. You can prioritize it based on your mental health, so me time. So this is necessary. Please do not ignore this. And also it can be family oriented. So if you have a significant other or have children. And I included the like and dislike button because you can move these options up and down depending on day to day and also weekly and also as much as you prefer. So everything's basically a work in progress. And then lastly, patience. So first of all, you'd want to personalize such to things as short-term goals, such as activities and travel. And of course, the patience part comes into trying to remove yourself from being a perfectionist. Of course, we are human, and so we're going to make mistakes. So just learning from how far we can push ourselves and how much is definitely a learning experience. So please be kind to yourself and just be patient with yourself while trying to figure these things out. And so also you would want to think about your long-term goals. So once again, work-life integration. So you want to think about your career. You also want to think about your life. So family-oriented and also include things about your morals and values, your passion, your purpose, and also what you think is ethical. And so the main goal for life for some people is that when you grow up, you certainly experience a lot of different things. So when you're a child, you really live it up and you play and you really appreciate not doing taxes and adulting. And then you learn to gain all these different types of relationships and mentorships. And soon enough, we do grow old. So once again, make sure that you're happy with what you choose to pursue. And so with stress management for patients at UT Health San Antonio, we have the counseling center. We also have a nutritionist in the wellness center. And once again, going off of Manpreet's talk and Raksha's, that it's important to have a support system, such as having your family to talk to and friends. And some outlets include exercise, dancing, painting, doing the 5D art that Manpreet did, joining student organizations, doing community outreach. You can read, grow plants, Definitely go outdoors and get fresh air right now. It's really hard to be cooped inside all day, and some people have been getting pets. But be sure to follow COVID-19 guidelines, okay? We want to keep everyone safe, and please mask up. And so at the end of the day, some things you might want to incorporate or you have already incorporated is to go to bed telling yourself 3 things you accomplished. So definitely small victories matter, because as a graduate student, we like to do experiments and sometimes we don't get the results we want. And so an example for right now could be I checked in on so-and-so. And so you are also connecting with that friend or individual, and you're also feeling better in terms of having that outlet. So once again, life is a roller coaster. And so for my summary, I would like to say that you do have time for yourself once you break down the hours of the week. Like I showed, work-life integration is the new norm. And lastly, please feel free to use my mantra of plan, prioritize, and patience. And lastly, be kind to yourself. Make sure you enjoy this roller coaster ride of graduate school, and you will get your PhD. And so now I'd like to open it up for discussion, questions, and comments. Thank you. Yeah, please feel free to make any comments. Thanks, Monpreet. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to offer some tips and tricks as well? Or we can cut it short so then people can get a break before the reveal of all the winners. But of course, everybody is a winner today for participating and learning something new.
I'll ask one question, Sam. So for the IDP, like how oftenly like do you spend hours? So I know I feel really bad about saying this. I made that plan like when I started grad school, but I never like kind of like followed it like I should have. So I think like it might help like for the new students at least, like how many hours do you invest and how do you make sure that you check on your IDP regularly?
Yeah, so I first actually heard about the IDP from Dr. Blake's boot camp when I was a first year graduate student, so 3 years ago. And so I think it's great to first start one by yourself. And then, of course, when you choose your mentor after rotations, definitely bring that IDP in and see what their feedback is, because it's always a work in progress. And something that's really nice is that you can keep track of your IDPs each year. So I like to work on it yearly and see what I've also accomplished and what I still need to work on. Of course, you can spend many hours on it. And if you do have the time, that's great. But definitely try to make your points as concise as possible. Try to streamline your thoughts for sure. Thanks, Monpreet, for the question.
Thank you for answering.
Thanks, Bryce. All right, Brandy. Oh, sorry, I saw
Yes, there's a question from Amy.
So the question is, do I or does the site I mentioned have any recommendations for indexes for personal strengths? So my IDP, it helps you. So in terms of indexes, I don't think it really has a numerical scoring system, but it definitely helps you identify what your passions are versus what you're good at and kind of separates those. So I think you can definitely use that. But in terms of personal strengths, there are other websites through some interprofessional courses that do definitely offer those indexes. Any other questions or comments? No? Okay. Thanks, Brandy, for being supportive all day long. I know that it's been a really long day since like what, 8 a.m.?
Yeah, it's been great. It's been really fantastic and a privilege to hear everyone's, to meet you all and to see your journeys and hear your stories. And I wish you all the best, and I'm grateful that you all are investing so much time and energy in making yourselves so useful to our world. So thank you, and keep up the good work.
And I'd like to say good job to everyone who participated in the 3-minute thesis today, as well as the poster presentations. And of course, everyone's involvement with coming to the virtual Mikiten Symposium this year and being very open to the modifications in order to make this event happen. So thank you, Lab Roots and Brandy for sure for helping us with that. And I'd like to say thanks, and that's it for me.
On top of that, we're probably going to send out a survey, everyone. We want to know some feedback from your experience today. So please take the time to fill those out, okay? All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Great job.